All right, good evening. Calling to order Tuesday, December 13th, City Council's special meeting. I'll have our city clerk do our roll call.
Mayor Kaylee Clark.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Amy Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Howe.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Present.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Ratuja Indapure.
Here.
Councilmember Rasheen O'Farrell.
Here. We all good? Yeah. All right, thank you. Councilmember O'Farrell, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you so much. Councilmember Indapure, do you mind doing the land acknowledgement? Sorry if you have it.
I have it.
Cool.
Okay. We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial.
Great, thank you. Next, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
Second.
Seconded, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, 7-0, that is approved. Next, we'll move to public comment. I believe, I don't have the sheet, but I will assume Mary is up first.
Before I begin and you record me, I want to make sure the volume is actually working this time. This last meeting was that one? Okay. So my name is Mary Wichter. I've lived in Sammamish 22 years. And tonight I have some input for your visioning discussion. The first input is, I don't know if you were able to either see the Planning Commission last Thursday, or I think they just put it up online on Monday, but it was very thoughtful. They had great discussions. They had good questions and suggestions. They also gave directional items. And if you haven't seen it, it's really worth looking at, because I believe you're discussing the presentation tonight, but you'll be hashing out what we're really doing in January and February. So if anyone hasn't seen that, it's very worth seeing. And then for my second thing on visioning, I did send an email with the links to all these materials. I bought some postcards, some bookmarks, and they're on how to build community and how to end global warming. And I get my ideas from everywhere, and this is from Syracuse Cultural Workers in New York. The text was written by the members of their community, and the artwork around it was done by Karen Kearney with watercolor and colored pencils. And then it's all on recycled paper with really great packaging. So I wanted to read it because it's short, and I just think it's so meaningful. These are ideas that can be shared with anyone, and anyone can do them. And I think they really affect where we live and how we live. So it's entitled, How to Build Community. Turn off your TV. Leave your house. Know your neighbors. Greet people. Look up when you're walking. Sit on your stoop. Plant flowers. Use your library. Play together. Buy from local merchants. Share what you have. Help a lost dog. Take children to the park. Honor elders. Support neighborhood schools. Fix it even if you didn't break it. Have potlucks. Garden together. Pick up litter. Read stories aloud. Dance in the street. Talk to the mail carrier. Listen to the birds. Put up a swing. Help carry something heavy. Barter for your goods. Start a tradition. Ask a question. Hire young people for odd jobs. Organize a block party. Bake extra and share. Ask for help even when you ask for help when you need it. Open your shades. Sing together. Share your skills. Take back the night. Turn up the music. Turn down the music. Listen before you react to anger. Mediate a conflict. Seek to understand. Learn from new and uncomfortable angles. Know that no one is silent, though many are not heard. Work to change this. And then I just wanted to let you know, I have per youth groups, I have them. If anyone wants to contact me, I'm willing to donate them, give them, share. And that's the end of my comment. Thank you so much. And I did leave copies for each of the people at the dais. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, Debbie Treen.
Good evening, Council. I'm Debbie Treen, and I live in Sammamish. Have been here for 12 years. I wanted to address tonight the vision statement as well. At the first vision statement meeting, it was obvious that there are two camps in this city. Those who want to preserve the natural environment and the mature legacy trees and wildlife, as we see now, bobcat, deer, bear, and those who are focused on mixed-use commercial and apartment development for future housing needs. The question was raised to the consultant, how are you going to reconcile these two really very diverse and opposite viewpoints? And the consultant, I give credit for actually saying, how do we resolve that? We address both. We don't pick one or the other. We visit and address both. There's three reasons people move to Sammamish, in my view. The good schools, we all know that's number one, the good schools. The natural environment, the fact that we still have a lot of forest and wildlife. And then, believe it or not, affordability. They move here because it's cheaper than Bellevue, Kirkland, or Seattle, where they work. That's why we moved here. It was cheaper than Kenmore. The vision statement needs to focus on keeping Sammamish a residential, family-focused community and leave some of the other commercial and the attempt to create an urban environment, leave that for future years. We'll be there eventually, but we need to hold the land in Sammamish that is on the edge of the urban growth boundary for future development needs, not develop it prematurely. And I want to speak to transit because there's a frequent conversation in this council about how transit's going to be our savior. Even with full transit build out, and those of you who are on the East Side Transportation Partnership know this is fact, even at full transit build out in Puget Sound, the expected trips are 3 to 4% on transit. Now, that might seem like a great goal if we're at 1% now. But recognize that means 96% of our trips will still be in vehicles. So the city has an obligation to meet that infrastructure need. So I urge you to focus on maintaining the residential character of this community, addressing the infrastructure needs for those who actually live here and commute to work, and be sure to preserve what brought us here in the first place, the forest, the mature trees, the wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, we have Jeff. Are you Jeff? Never mind. You would not like to speak? I am very sorry. Yeah. We'll move online. Yes, you're good.
If you wish to provide public comment, please raise your hand. If for those attendees who are joining by phone, please raise your hand by pressing *9. I see we have one person who has raised their hand, and I will promote them at the moment. Paul Stickney.
Good evening, City Council. Paul Stickney here. Very good comments by both Mary Wichter and Debbie Treen. Well thought out, appropriate. Last week, I talked a little bit about the pace of growth in Sammamish. And a quick summary is, for 20 years from 1980 to 1999, King County allowed about 650 homes a year, which is in what is now Sammamish. For 6 years, from 2001 or from 2000 to 2005, King County pipeline projects, we built out at about 500 homes a year. From 2006 to 2022, those are the only homes Sammamish has actually allowed, and they're roughly 3,500 homes at a pace of 205 homes a year. I think that the 85% of homes by King County was rapid growth. I think the 205 was very much managed growth for Sammamish. Tonight, I'd like to talk about an auspicious opportunity for Sammamish, and that is to attain cycle of life, authenticity of place by modestly adjusting housing, services, and transportation based on local needs and wants over life. How to bring the private built environment into optimal balance with the natural environment and the public built environment. Optimize all three. I think there's a real nexus of advantageous ideal ways in front of us now. There's a right set of circumstances coming together. And I think there's opportunity to both carpe diem and ad meliora. Carpe diem, as you know, is seize the day, but ad meliora is a great Latin phrase for towards better things. I think what we should do is really study as a community what the aims and why they were those aims of the first two comp plans. They had a different set of aims for the private built environment. The last 5 years had a different set of aims. Optimizing, enrich and sustain has a different set of aims. Let's look for the strengths and weaknesses in all three. Let's rectify and get facts and narrative accurate to level set all three ideologies and any other that wants to throw the hat in the ring, because we all want the same thing, to better Sammamish. The question is how? So after level setting growth ideologies with factual data, we should fairly contrast over 40 consequences and trade-offs under each ideology, then consider enlightened public input, then set legislative private built direction that adds the most value internally for our community over time, what I call net positive growth, and then develop our comp plan. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. Have a great meeting.
Thank you.
Is there any further commenters that would like to speak tonight? Please raise your hand. I don't see any more raised hands. Back to you, Mayor.
Great, thank you so much. Next, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I move we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussions or any questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, consent has passed. Next, we will move on to our pre-legislative session with any legislators that they're not. It's 2-7. It's too early, 4-7. Oh, my God. Okay.
Can we amend the agenda and do like the next item and get back, or?
Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, please.
The legislators are jumping on at 7.
Okay.
One option is, and Carrie, tell me if this won't work, but we could move to executive session now, come out at 7 for the duration of the legislative discussion, and then retire back into executive session after that.
So I move that we amend the agenda to begin our executive session now.
I'll second that.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, so we will move into executive session for potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101I, and the council may take action following session, and we'll be back at 7. Does that sound good? All right, great. Thank you. All right, are we good to go? Awesome. All right, thank you so much. Welcome back. So council, I will open it up for a motion.
I move to authorize the city's legal team at Lane Powell to initiate legal action against Puget Sound Energy, CenturyLink Lumen, Comcast, and Zayo for the damages, delays, impacts, and additional costs incurred on the City of Sammamish Issaquah Fall City Road project.
Second. All right, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you so much. So next, if we have Luke and Nick and Mike available, we'll move to the pre-legislative session.
Looks like we're getting everyone promoted here to panelist. If we can just give it a minute or two.
Mike, that is everybody that is in the attendees that have been promoted at the moment.
Okay.
Oh, one more coming.
All right, so perhaps I will just kick us off here. We are waiting on one more legislator here, but to start us off, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, and our esteemed legislative delegation. My name is Mike Suggs, Supervising Management Analyst here for the city, and I am joined on the line by Luke Esser, one of the city's 2 contracted lobbyists, as well as our city manager, Scott McCall. Tonight's legislative agenda item provides an opportunity for Council to meet with our delegation and discuss priorities for the upcoming state legislative session, including any areas where we can partner and support each other's priorities. Our partnership has been very successful to date. In recent years, we've secured millions in funding to address stormwater issues along Lewis Thompson Road, eliminate fish passage barriers to help enhance native kokanee salmon habitat, as well as improve Issaquah Fall City Road Phase 1, among a number of other successes. And these really would not have been possible without the support and advocacy of our legislators. We can imagine you are busy preparing for the session as well as the holidays, so we very much appreciate you carving out time to meet here with the city this evening. And we've scheduled approximately 45 minutes for this agenda item, although there is some flexibility in that timing if needed. And in our meeting packet tonight, we do have the city's adopted priorities, and those were previously sent to our legislative delegation. If it is helpful at any point in the conversation, we can pull it up on the screen. And after discussing the city's agenda, we would love to hear what our legislators' priorities are for the session. And so with that brief introduction, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Luke Esser.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. Appreciate that very much. And very grateful to have Senator Wellman, State Senator from the 41st District, which covers many wonderful communities, but most importantly, much of the southern half of the city of Sammamish, and Representative Lisa Callan of the 5th Legislative District. Oh, and being joined as we speak in real time by Representative Bill Ramos, both of whom represent many wonderful communities, but most importantly, the Klahani and thereabouts in southern Sammamish. So appreciate all of you joining us. I believe, Mike, our plan is to briefly show segments of the adopted legislative priorities that the council has adopted, and not keep that up on the screen very long, but just as kind of some mileposts for us. And so we can start with the first section now, if that is timely. And we always benefit from Mike's ability to encapsulate our agenda into an acronym SAM, and this year is no exception. And the letter S is this year for Safe, Sustainable, and Resilient Connections. And there's been a big emphasis in the last year or so on active transportation. The Move Ahead Washington Transportation Package that was adopted by the legislature this year made historic investments in active transportation. And we're hoping to follow and build on that with a couple of projects that are important in the city of Sammamish. The first is the Endeavor Elementary School Safe Route and Flood Reduction Project, which is located in the 5th Legislative District. And on each of these, we'll have either staff or council members weigh in with more particulars. The other is the Inglewood Hill Road Sidewalk Connection Project, which is located up in the north part of the city in the 45th District. And with that, Mike, I think maybe we can take the paper off the screen, and I think it would be wonderful if any of the council members or staff could give us maybe a little bit more background on both the Endeavor Elementary School Safe Route Project and the Inglewood Hill Sidewalk Connection Project.
Yeah, so I guess I'll kick us off, and then any members of the council, please feel free to jump in. The Endeavor Elementary School project is really designed to resolve the flooding issue that we have there on Issaquah City Road. It's right next to, as you can tell, Endeavor Elementary School, and it does experience flooding over the roadway every so often during heavy rain cycles. So what we're seeking to do with this project is raise the road about 3 feet, as well as install bike lanes, curb, gutter, and sidewalk to ensure safe access to Endeavor Elementary. And then on the second project there, the Inglewood Hill Sidewalk Connection Project, we have curb, gutter, and bike lanes up most of Inglewood Hill Road, but there is a 900-foot gap there. So this project would really help to complete that gap, connect the Sammamish Highlands shopping commercial area down to the East Lake Sammamish Trail, so that folks could access that by means other than car. So with that, I will turn it over if there's any other context that others would like to provide.
So I'm hoping Audrey's our professional. Councilmember Napure?
Yep. So good to see you, Senator Wellman and Representative Callan and Ramos. Congratulations on your reelection. And we're so happy and proud that you represent us. So thank you for all the work that you do. You know, Endeavor Elementary is kind of where I live, near Klahani. And I think this project we feel is really important because it also helps with safe paths to school. It increases, you know, mobility. It helps our kids walk to school or, you know, have their parents walk them to school. I know there are lots of kids who live in Klahani who actually do you know, live very close to that school. So I think I know I have experienced this flooding of the waterways there, and this project will really help. Any help the legislature can provide us, I think that really helps the families in Sammamish. Again, I know all three of you have been really huge proponents of, you know, ensuring the well-being of our students, and so I would, you know, any support on this project would be really helpful. So thank you.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yes, I want to echo some of what Councilmember Ndupuri said, and again, thank you for attending. It's great to see you guys, even if it's online. You know, we're working really hard in the city on connectivity and providing alternate forms of transportation. So that's why we did talk about safe and sustainable. As you know, you've all visited our great city. We don't have a lot of transit for various reasons. So being able to provide places for people to walk and bike is pretty critical to our connectivity. I know as we're working on our comp plan, we're looking at how we reduce vehicle miles traveled, and so being able to provide these safe alternatives. The nice thing about the Inglewood Hill Road project as well is it also meets some of our ADA requirements as well. So again, trying to be safe, sustainable, and inclusive are pretty top goals for us over the next couple of years. So we'd really appreciate any help you can provide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I may just say that it's very helpful when we see the entire comp plan, and you know, we can see the extent of your finishing all the different projects that are you know, necessary to make sure that these connections, which are so important in, you know, in multimodal thought plans so that you do have the ridership, but to being able to switch to bicycles and walking and provide those services are really important. So I'm looking forward to seeing the comp plans that we're going to be seeing shortly, actually. Which will give us, an idea. Are we talking 3 years out, 5 years out to completion to get the total picture of what needs to happen? Of course, there's constant maintenance and upgrades, but really getting a comprehensive view of, kind of all the connections that are needed in the long run are important.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Wellman. But I believe that the timing on the comp plans will definitely be end of, isn't it 2024 now? So it'll be a couple of sessions out. So we are hoping to be able to make some progress in the interim on some of these connections.
Absolutely, that's noted.
Okay, thanks.
I wasn't saying we're not going to do anything till we see everything. That wasn't it at all. I was just saying that, it does help for us to, we're looking at, 4 or 5 communities. And so it really helps to, kind of see how it's developing as you can share. That's very valuable.
On the Endeavor Elementary Safe School route, did you all apply for any of the Safe School route funding in the 22 bucket that was, I think it was in June when that closed?
Yes, and the project did receive a ranking in the top half. The problem is that there are so many applications, 160 statewide, and I don't even think they'll get to the top quartile of those will all get funded, unless, and we'd love to see this, there were more resources found for that particular programmatic endeavor. But yes, definitely trying to make ourselves avail of all opportunities for these programs.
Great, that helps me. We know that you already applied. We know the next opportunity isn't again until the next biennium chunk,
right.
Which, yeah, so we'll see how that all plays out in the transportation budgets coming forward. And then, duly noted the 1 million and the 500K definitely, making it across your 3 legislative districts that represent you in local community projects and how those connect to tie. I know you'll be certainly pushing for that. And then the multimodal, I imagine Rep. Ramos can talk to a little bit.
Yes, we definitely feel an obligation to try and avail ourselves of the programmatic opportunities, though we're not too proud to accept help from the local and community projects avenues as well for these programs. So we wanted to bring them to your attention for multiple reasons.
Right, and with some that we talked about, we did put some extra money in some of those pots in the transportation package as well. So, like say, Rights to Schools, even I believe, if I remember right, got some additional funding versus the normal level, as well as you can get those fundings from others. So, like I say, other sources as well. And the one question I have on these projects is how ready are they to go? So what work has been done as far as environmental planning, all that kind of stuff. When could actual construction start on these? And I'm assuming the thing you put up there briefly, you're going to send us so we didn't have to memorize it on the screen.
Yes, I emailed it at 12:29 this afternoon, which is not, obviously it's been a busy day, and we'll make sure it gets to your LAs and to you more than once, I guarantee you.
Thanks.
Okay.
And then timing for project readiness.
Audrey, can you help us out with that?
Absolutely. Good evening. I'm Audrey Sarcy, the Interim Public Works Director. So I would need to confirm where we are, but both projects are in design phase currently. And for the Endeavor Elementary Safe Route and Flood Reduction Project, we also recently received a grant from King County Flood Reduction for, I think, $297,000 for to help us with design phase of that project. But where we are in terms of the milestones, I would need to get back to you. But I believe that we are in the work plan, and that project is also on both of our capital plans for both our transportation capital plan and our stormwater capital plan.
Great, thanks. So just when you send that out, the date that's important is when you could you anticipate actual construction. Of course. It would be nice to just email that out. It'd be great. Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other hands from council. I don't know if we want to move to the letter A.
And the A for 2023 is accessible habitat for native salmon. And we should start with profuse thanks for the local legislative delegation for funding for previous projects that have helped move some of these and similar projects forward that are designed to help give us a better chance for the survival of the kokanee, the special little red fish from our area. And this really is a regional priority. We know that the Snoqualmie tribe and King County have been very supportive of these efforts, and there's been some good work done, but more remains. And that's where the three items on the list come for. The George Davis Creek, for which there has been right-of-way purchased and a lot of effort gone into planning. It's time to fund construction for that project now by replacing an old fish blocking culvert with one that allows fish passage and will open up nearly a mile, 3/4 of a mile of spawning habitat for the kokanee. Plus the Demery Hill stormwater retrofit. That is a project that is a tributary of George Davis Creek and serves a similar purpose. And the Southeast 20th Street and 228th Avenue Southeast project benefits the waters flowing into Pine Lake Creek. And I'll mention the George Davis Creek project. That pretty much is on the boundary between the 45th and the 41st. The Demery Hill project is in the 45th, and the Southeast 20th project is in the 41st legislative district. Provide some context there. And with that, Mike, maybe we can get back to seeing the shining faces of everyone involved and have either staff or council member give us some further context on these accessible habitat projects.
I think you provided a great overview there, Luke. I think the only thing I'd add on the George Davis Creek project is that it is currently not fish passable whatsoever. So it is completely blocking all of the habitat upstream. And so this will really open up a significant amount of habitat for our native kokanee salmon. And with that, I think we can hand it over to our council members if there are any additional comments.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that all of these projects are stormwater projects. We're investing heavily in the next few years in a lot of stormwater retrofit projects. Much of our development was done under some pretty old stormwater standards from way back, and so we're really focusing on the stormwater retrofits and upgrades. That first project feeds directly into Lake Sammamish, and so in addition to the fish passability, just being able to upgrade the stormwater management there so that we aren't putting as much sediment, et cetera, out into the lake is just really critical. So these are projects that we need to do from a stormwater perspective. And then in addition to that, as we go and do them, we need to make sure that they are in fact fish passable, which is a really terrible phrase when you try to say that fast, by the way, fish passable. But I just wanted to emphasize that the stormwater management, again, from an environmental perspective, is just really critical for our lakes and streams and all of our groundwater. And then on top of that, the fish need better stormwater management and the passability. So would really appreciate any help you can give us on those.
Councilmember.
Yeah, I just, one of the things that I'm very concerned with, first of all, we are concerned with our native salmon, but we have many species of native salmon or salmon that spawn in these grounds. And some of them do very, very well, as we've seen in this last year. We had some salmon who were unable to spawn because of dry creek beds. We had some salmon that actually, a species that actually did many more than expected. I do think it's going to be this is just from my perspective to you, as we go forward, as we look at where we are, I have really been focused this year on looking at looking at adaptation as kind of a way of looking at sustainability. Sustainability has really been based in over the last many years, for good or for bad, on maintaining what we have and keeping things green, et cetera. I think my personal feeling is that time has passed and we've done as much as we probably can in that regard. Now we're looking at a temperature rise significantly. We're looking at more storms. We're looking at the impact of not being able to stay under 2 degrees of additional heat. And given that, I think that we're looking long term. How are we handling water in that regard? If we are doing things to sustain a particular breed of salmon, but that salmon goes to the ocean and the ocean is warmer than it is now, and that salmon can't survive in the ocean, should we look at another species or should we look at other species? So I'm just asking you to be thoughtful. I'm personally interested in plans that really look at adaptation to significant changes in weather, and putting that out there. Any information that you provide when you look at your comprehensive plan or when you give us information about a particular breed of salmon, et cetera, if you know any additional information that this salmon will survive under these circumstances and conditions, that's very helpful for me. Thank you.
Councilmember Napure? Oh, sorry, Luke, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I am not a fish biologist, but I know enough to be dangerous about the kokanee in that they're either unique, rare if not unique among salmon in that they do not head out to the ocean. They just love Lake Sammamish so much. They stay there for their entire life till they're ready to come back and spawn in one of the local tributaries. Now, Lake Sammamish is challenged as well, and I know there has been some of the kokanee have been flown up to the San Juan Islands, I believe it was, in an effort to make sure that the species doesn't become extinct. I don't know if we have any of our experts on that topic, but it really is a remarkable story of how the county and the local tribe and the city and volunteers are doing so much work. And that's why we're excited about this project, because it does give us 3/4 of a mile of new habitat that has been closed for generations to the kokanee.
Councilmember Napure?
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo what's already been said, and I think, Senator Wellman, your point is very well taken. I think we need to think from different angles when we're thinking about our habitat. I think one of the reasons why I support these projects is, as Councilmember Stewart pointed out, they're to do with stormwater. And almost every time we have some public comment, we hear from our residents in Sammamish how much the water is just affecting them, right? Like the rains are stronger and their driveways get flooded. The streams that are on the side, they get flooded. So I think managing stormwater is extremely important. And I think maybe it was late last year or sometime last year where we started saying the land acknowledgement pledge. I think that is something new the city of Sammamish started. And I think, we say that land acknowledgement with a lot of respect for those who have been here before us. And I know the kokanee salmon is treasured and part of culture for the native populations here. And then I think, that particular, the George Davis Creek Storm project has support not only from us, but from the tribe, from the Waira 8 partners, from King County. So I feel like it's a regional effort. It's not just something that the city is doing. And I think, it's really important for us when we say that pledge every week or every time we meet, that we're actually really doing something about it, and they're not just empty words, that we're supporting our communities and honoring people who came before us and will be there after us too.
I think, I think it should be noted that we went through a mild drought last year. I was quite worried. I'm blessed enough to live in the trees, which on Mercer Island, which I love. It is such a special place. But I looked around those trees knowing that we've had sweeping fires across the state and wondering if I was living in a matchbox. When they were so dried out, I was really worried about, what we were. So thank you for that. I do think that our thinking, I would like to see our thinking change in terms of moving water, yes, but also retaining water, figuring out, we know that, in our agriculture center, we used to have snow mass. Sorry, it's late in the day and I got in 12:30 this morning from a conference. We used to have snow mass where you could see in June or July, and now it's gone by May. And so that affects what crops we run, where we need the water, when we need the water. And so again, always thinking of those kinds of things.
Councilmember Trine?
Yeah, so I don't know if we need to direct the city manager on this, but I think if we provided our stormwater addendum to the Department of Ecology on stormwater to them, that would be one way to help them, our representatives, to see where we're headed. And then the other would be to bring forward, I can't remember the meeting that it was in, but the Kokanee Work Group had a whole packet or information explaining what the kokanee the salmon, how they live, where they spawn, and what the conditions are that are best for them. And so that might be something else that we might want to add in when we deliver the our legislative agenda items. And then following up that, I know Representative Bill Ramos and I were on the stage there at the release of the kokanee salmon and how important that was for the tribes and for the groups that were there, and how we should I believe we just don't even know yet how effective this group can be in solving this problem of saving the fish from extinction. And the number of dollars and the scientific research that's going into, and the genetic information that's being collected, all the way to volunteers actually going out in boats and trying different methods to help them survive, is pretty amazing. And so I think the George Davis Project is just another step in that direction to make sure to have this species survive even with climate change. And we're fully aware that climate change is here, it's real, and then as a city, we're working to solve those problems that are really complex and challenging. But I think that stormwater addendum and information from the Kokanee Work Group may go in with that. We've spent a lot of money too, by the way, as a city, to secure the property and to make sure that this passageway is something that is viable and sustainable for the long haul. It's just we're still a few years away from seeing it to full completion. And when I say that, I mean that the riparian canopy that covers the stream beds are in full bloom and full maturity. So we're still a few years away from success on George Davis, but all you would have to do is look at the success we've had at Zaccoos Creek, and you would know that we're headed in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rep Ramos.
Thank you. Yeah, this is, great. Always trying to help our salmon and I hope we're very aware of and are partaking as much as possible in the project. We started this last year in Lake Sammamish is a pilot project, hopefully for the state. trying to deal with light pollution and early life stage predation, which will for all salmon, kokanee, and whatever in Lake Sammamish, hoping to expand this. We're working with the WIRA 8 and King County Conservation District, and kind of leading it with City of Issaquah, and hopefully expand around the lake to all 4 cities, to particularly building a model ordinance so you can easily adapt something to reduce or eliminate light pollution, which is a very simple, inexpensive way of reducing, detrimental effects on the young salmon, so they can actually have a shot at growing and getting back to where they need to be. So I'm hoping that you jump full-fledged into this as we continue this project into this next year and after that as well, and consider that model ordinance for your city. I think it's going to be an important piece. You've got a lot of lakeshore with a lot of lights on it that we'd love to get a hold of. Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other hands from council.
So Mike, maybe it's time to move on to the letter M, which for this legislative session is multi-purpose community fields. One item there, the Inglewood Middle School multi-purpose field project. It is located in the 45th district, but this project will provide an opportunity to greatly increase the availability of the same area through the synthetic turf fields. And Mike, if you have any further info on that, or if council members have any comments about that project, now would be a great time.
Yeah, what I heard from our Parks Department was that this project will open up about 1,280 hours of annual field use to our community. So it's going to be a big increase in the amount of field availability that our residents can access. And as well, flat land is very scarce, as we all know, in the city. So we need to look into these partnerships, as we have here with the Lake Washington School District, to try and increase that access where we can, where flat land exists. So those are the only additional comments I have. I'll go ahead and hand it back over to the mayor.
Councilmember Howe.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. I'll just make a quick comment about Inglewood Middle School. And actually Sammamish, because we helped pioneer interlocal agreements years ago. These joint agreements between school districts and the city to do this joint use. And it's tricky to navigate at times in terms of who does what and who owns what. However, when you're able to pull it off, the benefit is maximized for the entire population. And so I happen to know that particular field. It is treacherous as all get out. It has to be fixed because it just isn't safe in its current condition. So updating it, we don't have a choice, but we have a great plan. It's in phases. It's ready to go. So I'm very optimistic we're able to get this one launched and off the ground very quickly.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, again, we tried to pick projects that are partnerships, so it's not just things that will benefit us, but this is for the Lake Washington School District, which while the school is located in the 45th LD, the students come from both the 41st and the 45th, so that it does serve a lot of students. And one of the things that we've all learned from the pandemic is making sure having plenty of both active and passive outdoor spaces is really critical for people. And again, this partnership with the school district will open up so many hours of use for the kids when they're in school, for after school, and on the weekends for our leagues, and just for people to be able to play. I will tell you that our school, Inglewood Middle School, does not have a track. So when the middle schoolers want to do, there is sort of a track there, but it's not really a track. So when they want to have track meets and things, they have to go elsewhere. So this will be really critical. I can tell you from Little League, one of the ball fields there is was in need of repair when my 22-year-old was in Little League. So if that gives you any indication as to how long we've been needing to update some of these fields. So I'm excited because I know our residents want more fields. We have a lot of areas that we're holding for passive, play and parks and trails, but we need fields. And so this is a plan that our Parks Department and the school district put together to really be able to give us more field space and field time, which I think is really important. So we would appreciate any support and help there. Thank you.
Rep. Callen.
Thank you. And it's always great when you can create a joint community asset, right? And I know quite a bit about the partnerships that you pioneered with the Issaquah School District in the fields and Skyline High School and that work and all of that, and the ebbs and flows of what that looked like in Mintz. So just wondering a little bit, again, I heard, I think Councilmember Howe talk about this. It was, there's kind of a phasing as well as parts of it could be moved quickly. So the funding model and how that's coming together, and is it connected to any kind of school levy or bond dollars, or what's the phasing on that, and how does that all connect?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Scott McCall, City Manager. It's so nice to have you all here this evening. Really appreciate you coming out tonight. It's nice to see our delegation in any form that we can get them. So we really appreciate you joining us. To answer your question, Representative Callen, this is a city project and a city-funded project. The school district, while we understand the importance of the partnership, they're being a good partner by providing the space for the field, if you will, and then the city will operate it post-school hours and make it available to the community. So that's the partnership piece of it. In terms of funding, that it's the city's project, and to fund and take care of moving forward.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you. That helps me. And then the funding for that, is that in the phasing that you were talking about or referenced?
Yeah, in the city's CIP, this is a project that we're moving forward. There's a couple of different phases to it, and we, if we cannot receive funding in this way, sorry, I'm having my Parks Director Teams me as we're talking.
Yeah.
Nice.
The beauty of, so she is sharing that. The school provides the 10 acres of land in the parking lot, and they will build the track and 50% of the restroom building, and the whole thing will be built at once. So that is the plan. And obviously, if we get some help with the funding here, that alleviates or offers the opportunity to do other things in the future. Since we are on that funding schedule, this is we have to try to get this to the end of the road here this year.
Gotcha. Okay, that's all super helpful. And then the last question I guess I have, this is probably coming from my old school board days myself, noting that the two lighted multi-purpose synthetic turf fields, so the lighting, and I'm not as familiar and don't have Inglewood in my brain as much as I do some of the other school districts in the south part of Sammamish, or schools, I mean. But is there what do you have you have community engagement around the lighting and just lessons learned from some of the school district, Issaquah School District lighting concerns and community and what that looks like and means? Just would love to make sure you guys have, however we can support and partner in lessons learned. I would love to make sure I connect dots and connect people in that regard, if that would be helpful. Let me just
Thank you, Representative, very much. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I will share that the lighting technology has improved dramatically over the last couple of years, and the city did go through an extensive master planning process for this, and the lights were included as part of the master planning process. So there has been a fairly extensive public outreach. And then when we get to that point, obviously our team will work closely with the surrounding neighbors, although as my Parks Director is pointing out, there are very few neighbors that actually surround the field at the moment. And for context, it's just a little bit north and east of Eastlake High School.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you, and I appreciate that. And it's amazing how much the technology has changed even in the last, 10 to 15 years, which has been so helpful for the climate that we live in and the daylight hours that we have to do these outdoor activities, especially after school, and what a community assets they are, and how we can do that without the added light pollution that we've talked about, some of the impacts on our neighbors, but also on our fish, right? Which isn't what Inglewood is about, but just really appreciate the due diligence you all have done on this, and I'm fully supportive of building these kind of community assets.
Yes, I think if the lights hit the salmon, that would be a problem. We
Those would
hope
be
they
some
don't.
serious lights.
That would not be an increased technology, that's for sure.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor Lamb?
I just had one last comment, which I haven't heard yet, was that this particular field, which is really important to us, one of the reasons is because it is in our northern part of Sammamish, and the majority of our athletic fields are in the southern portion. So this would be extremely beneficial for the people that live up in the north end. Thank you.
Rep Ramos.
Thank you. And yeah, I love these partnerships, and it's a great way to get things done. Fields are very expensive. I'm always concerned when they're attached to a school that they don't get as much public access as we like. Schools like to keep things locked up and very strictly controlled. And if we're doing this in the public, I really want to make sure the public has access, not just reservation for certain teams, but other folks can use it as much as possible as well. Rather than seeing many fields that I see just sitting and no one using them. So I just want to make sure that side that you talked about interlocal agreement, to make sure that if it's our Parks Department running it, it's going to be an open access to the public as much as reasonable.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, great questions. The other part about the lights is that there is a bit of a tree lining around the areas where the fields are, so that will provide a bit of buffer as well for the lighting. And I will say that our Parks Department is quite has a lot of experience about installing lights in parks and the outreach that'll be needed there. And Representative Ramos, to your question and concern, I will tell you that we only have one middle school in the north end of Sammamish, so the number of students at that school is quite large, and I believe that during the day, all day long, those fields will get plenty of use from the various gym classes, and in terms of the interlocal agreement, we again have a lot of experience in doing that and making sure that we have the partnerships set up so that those fields can get accessed by the various sports teams and individuals that need them on the weekends and the evenings. I just want to point out, though, that our schools are also public, right? So while we, those concerns have been raised before about, well, it's a public asset. Yes, it is. And our public school children should be able to go outside for gym and not come in knee deep in mud. So it does enable them to get outside more during the day, especially during these dark and rainy times, which I think is really critical for their health and well-being. And I think, as Mike pointed out in the beginning, it will add thousands of hours of opportunities for everyone in the community to take advantage of those fields. So really appreciate any support you guys can give us.
All right, I'm not seeing any other hands from council, and we had 3 members on the committee to help put this together. Were you on that? It was Councilmember Stewart, Indapure, and Deputy Mayor Lamb. So the 3 of them worked, I know, with Mike and probably Luke and Nick. So thank you all for really putting this together and for everyone coming this evening. I'm not sure, Luke, if you have anything else, or Mike.
Yeah, just a couple things. We'll definitely, my colleague Nick, and I'll mention in his defense that he is a romantic at heart, and today is his anniversary, which is the reason he's not joined us for this fun event. But he and I will definitely be following up both with those legislators who were kind enough to join us this evening, and with those local legislators who weren't able to join us this evening, and making sure we continue those lines of communication. I also think it's important for the city to be aware of perhaps some of our local legislators' priorities. So Senator Wellman and Representatives Callan and Ramos, if there's any priorities you'd like to share with us that you think we might benefit from knowing more about and that we could perhaps partner with you on, I think this would be a great time for you to share some of that information with us.
Who wants to go first?
In my experience, senators usually go first, but maybe that's old school Olympia thinking.
Well, I'll jump in. First of all, because I saw that you also supported a number of things I thought I'd touch on. I served on the Public Works Board for 3 years, so I am very much aware of its incredible value to the state and to all of our communities. And so wished it had been a trust fund, not just an assistance account, but I'm all for making sure that we return the flow of funding to that board. It has served us very well for many, many years. I also wanted, yes, of course, on the State Housing Trust Fund, very important to that. You may be interested to know that I sit on the tax structure work group that has been going on for 3 or 4 years now, and with the thought that we are taking a very hard, long look. Hopefully you've been able to participate in the outreach that has been done across the state to every age group, to every ethnic group, to every geography of the state, to really get input both for our property taxes, the community taxes, as well as the state taxes. And just this morning, we took a vote to make a recommendation not to change the cap on the annual property tax. We know cities have been really, really challenged by the limitation there on that part. And we did vote to bring to the legislature the potential 3%. Not that you must go to 3%, but that would give flexibility. But as you noted in the piece that you sent out, an inflationary index rather than just the cost of city services. I know, again, speaking to the challenges that cities have in adapting to sustainability and adapting to major challenges because of climate change, they're going to be needing some flexibility with funding, and you've had none. It's been really, really challenging. So definitely want to manage that. As chair of education, there's a number of things that we're involved with, including a focus on the transportation formula to make sure that you're fully covered as well, not just for your regular busing, but for the special education kids that can't ride on the bus, the McKinney-Vento homeless kids and foster kids coming from another placement to their home district. So looking at a transportation fund that is more extensive than it has been. And I don't know if any of your students go to any skill centers, but I'm looking to include skill center funding, transportation funding in our transportation package. Then if you have some special kids who are going out of state, those generally run about $160,000 a year. And if you have those children, you've been footing the bill for them and getting reimbursed by the state. That hits the budget in hard ways. And so we're looking to make sure that you are reimbursed quarterly instead of once a year. Also to change the cap from 13.5 to 14.5. We're looking at that. There's a number of other things. We have rebasing of teacher salaries, which we were authorized to do. And we are in the process of doing that and coming back with something that I can tell you there are sharp eyes looking at. What are you giving us exactly what we've asked for, or are you juggling the numbers? I haven't been happy with what I've gotten so far. I think I've sent back the transportation formula and the rebasing formula 3 times so far, saying not good enough. And so we're still working on that as far as that's concerned. I'm trying to think of continuing to work on broadband, which doesn't concern us as much perhaps as it does our rural communities. And, from an equity perspective, that's really, really quite important. Trying to think of anything else anybody wants to jump. Well, you guys jump in on. Those are some of the top things that I've got.
Senator, you're our advisor for the Women's Commission, and I know you're a great champion for that.
Thank you, Ratusha. I have two very important bills that I'm going to be running. But by the way, there will be an extensive package of bills that supports women's reproductive rights in our state. And so that's going to be, I already know 8 different bills that are focused on that, including one very comprehensive one that I know the House has been working on, that Drew Hansen has been working on. We've been working on that as well. But I will come back asking for informed consent when looking at breast implant surgery. It is black labeled, and it often leads to breast impact. There's breast illness, BII, whatever that is. I can't think of it now, but it does lead to that, and making sure that women are aware of what that involves. The other thing is, right now, for the Women's Commission, I have a bill for flat closure. If you have a mastectomy and you choose to get breasts, because of course you're not a woman unless you have breasts, you hear that often, they will pay for surgery for breast implants. But if you decide that you do not wish to go that route because it has dangers associated with it, you're stuck with the leftover remains of the surgery, which is often excess skin hanging in different patches and not very attractive. So we think that you should have access to insurance regardless of which way you go, not only if you choose to have breast implants. And then dissolution of marriage bill. I've got another bill that Ratuja, I'm running again. So I've got some things that really are focused on the Women's Commission for sure. And I'll be quiet now.
Rep. Callan?
Thank you. I was trying to jot down all my notes. So thank you, Senator Wellman. You covered a lot of the education, I think, agenda items that we're certainly looking at, and the high level that she had mentioned around what we can do more around special education and how we're delivering that and the costs associated with that. Transportation model, all of that, the rebasing of the salary base and the direct apportionment that's connected to really with the outcome of McCleary, right? And how that was settled and decided on. So this is the first time since that McCleary decision and the first rollout of it that we've had a rebasing and connected to that. So it's a big deal. It's not a little deal. So it'll be an interesting session in that regard, and really appreciate Senator Wellman's leadership in that space. Also, educator workforce, certainly be looking at that. And then I think there'll be, on the equity work around what we're trying to do that's multi-tiered and multi-layered around a lot of aspects around equity work, but certainly language access and dual language access and what we're trying to accomplish there, I think, are some other components. I have a bill that I will be running again that moved out of both committees last year, just didn't get it across the line on the, it was actually pulled to the floor in the Senate, just didn't get it before the 5 o'clock bell on that last day. And that's on safe storage reminders going through the K-12 communication network to share out Department of Health information, public service announcement information, reminding parents of the unique risks that their families face. Just like if you were in Arizona and you have a neighborhood full of pools, you've got toddlers around, you have to be reminded and thoughtful about how you're doing safe storage of medicine and firearms and ammunition, and then a conversation around or sharing out of current overdose trends and overdose response information that is coming from Department of Health. It's just putting out the whatever it is that Department of Health is providing them. So very little work for our districts, but helping to get it out to those key communities, because we know our youth in particular are their number one cause of death right now is through guns. And then close, we all know the impacts that we're having on overdoses and medications and access to those. So I'll continue to be working on that element. And then in that vein, I co-chair of the State's Children Youth Behavioral Health Work Group. There's a full set of recommendations that came out from the work group that starts with behavioral health workforce. There was an apportionment increase in nursing and mental health counseling through the state's K-12 budget general apportionment. It doesn't mean a lot for our school districts because they were already using local levy dollars for that. So it'll allow for some discretionary dollars to be spent maybe in a different way, either adding more capacity or trying to help with some of the other aspects of bringing support services to our students, which would be great. Lake Washington and Issaquah are both great school districts in that regard, really focusing on whole children. But there's a lot more about how do we build the workforce and make sure that we've actually got behavioral health clinicians that are available when children need them. So we'll be looking on that. And then it covers the whole spectrum of perinatal through basically transitioning age youth, including trying to put together a package around our children that have been in crisis and are stuck in hospitals right now because there's no step down facilities or other places for these children to go. I'm sure you've read the articles there. And then, of course, some other work around the behavioral health kids that are working through complex needs and still need to have school and education and what that looks like and means and how we're delivering that education, whether that's in juvenile justice settings, whether that's in behavioral health clinical settings, whatever that might look like. So there's just a lot of work to be done in that space as well. With my Capitol hat on, second, Senator Wellman's comments on the Public Works Fund, making sure that we're keeping that strong and robust. We had great strides this last session recovering some of those funds. We'll have to continue to do the work and then try to protect it on an ongoing basis. And then a lot of funding, of course, I think there'll be a lot of activity in housing, both in the capital budget and and operating, trying to figure out what is our need to meet our housing demands, just getting some updates today on the level of housing that is necessary and needed across Washington state. And then understanding what that looks like from a state's problem to resolve and how we support and coordinate with our local jurisdictions on that space. So I would encourage you to stay very closely connected to us in that discussion to see what the impacts may be and how you as Sammamish would like to advocate, for those pieces. With the capital budget, certainly looking from my perspective to try to figure out how we can do more supports on infrastructure and the costs that are associated around infrastructure to support the build out of affordable housing and what that might look like and mean for our cities as well. Trying to add more tools into the toolbox. And then I was trying to think if there's a few other things. I'm sure general workforce in general, there's a lot of conversations around that, not just behavioral health, but also healthcare, nursing, and staffing around what we're trying to do in those arenas. So I will be serving again as Vice Chair of Capital on the House side. I'm excited to do that role also on K-12 again, and then on our Human Services Early Learning Committee, which serves children, youth, and families, and will be the juvenile justice, foster care, behavioral health, and then any of the human service aspects that we have that the state provides, as well as the developmentally disabled administration work and some of the services that get connected to that. Well, that's it.
Thank you, Luke. I could read your lips. So just reiterate again, I mentioned earlier about the light pollution pilot on Lake Sammamish. I'm really hoping everybody jumps on board on that. Also, just as of today, I guess I've been named the new chair of the State Government and Tribal Relations Committee, which also covers elections and those kinds of things. So I'll be very busy as I chair a new committee there. I'm going to be staying on transportation. If some of you saw King 5 today, there was a actual great news report on the proposal that I'm working with Chair Fai on bringing forward for shifting from gas tax to pay by mile road usage charge. So we get away from gas tax and everybody pay actually for their use of the road, which would be a fair and user fee. And we got to shift from gas tax because it is no longer functioning after 100 years to pay for keeping our transportation system in good order. So watch for that. There's lots of things to talk about on that, but we'll get into those details as those come about. Also continuing on community safety with public safety, policing issues, and I will also be taking the lead on this year. You will see some legislation from me on domestic violent extremism and how we're going to try to get our hands around that that problem that we have in our country and in our state and in our local community as well. The one big other thing we do need to address is the Supreme Court's what they call the Blake decision. We do need to come up with a way to deal with drug possession and how to balance the need to get folks that need help, the help they need, and how to deal with all those overall. It's complicated. It's a lot of human nature involved, and people that are in situations that we need to help change that, so we keep our community safe and we take care of our people at the same time. So that's going to be a lot of work in that arena as well. And I'll close it there.
Well, thank you very much. And Mike, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to close things off.
No, I just very much appreciate everyone's time for coming out tonight. And we've taken notes on all your questions, and we'll probably be following up with some additional information here shortly. So again, thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. The 45th now is on our short list, so thank you, 41st and 5th. You're now our favorites. Yeah.
There you go. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you all.
Great to be here. Thanks. Have fun.
See you all. Bye. Okay, council. Next, we have a closed session. I'm not sure how long this one we need. So pursuant to RCW 42.30.1404B, for the governing body to review proposals made in the course of professional negotiations while in progress. And council may take action following. Do you think 15 minutes? I'm not sure. 15? What time is it now? So we'll come back at like 8:17. Is that okay? Cool. All right, thank you, everybody. We are back. So next we are moving on to new business. Sorry, community visioning with David and Jeff.
Jeff, you tried to make talk earlier.
Yes. I mean, it's a public comment sign-in sheet. No, yeah. This is on you. Yeah.
Great. Good evening. David Pyle, Department of Community Development. With me tonight, I have Jeff Arango from Framework Consultants. I believe Jeff is being promoted so that he can share his screen. Thank you. And while we do that, tonight we're going to be discussing the city's vision statement and a workshop towards crafting a revised vision statement. With that, I'll turn it over to Jeff. We're going to wait just a sec. It looks like he actually was promoted, so I think we're all set. And Jeff will be managing multiple different windows here on his computer, so bear with us while we get those set up.
Okay, thank you, David, and good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, City Council members, City Manager, and others. Pleasure to be here this evening. Jeff Arango with Framework. I am project managing the comprehensive plan on the consulting side. And we're here tonight as a follow-up from our meeting in September, where we kind of introduced the topic of visioning with the Planning Commission. And so we're back here really to focus on getting your additional thoughts on vision statement as we move towards that early next year. We have done this exercise with the staff team a couple weeks ago, and we met with the Planning Commission last week and had a really great discussion. Thank you very much. And all of the input that we've got from those sessions will be shared out as well. We have a Miro board that I'm going to share right now to be able to provide some context and to be able to collect your feedback tonight. So let me share that. And then just by way of process, November was, the focus was the planning summit. We did have one session on visioning. Those videos and some of the polling we did are available on the project website. We're now moving towards developing the vision statement and a scoping resolution that'll be before the council in late March. And there will be a couple of meetings leading up to that where you'll see some of the information that'll be part of that resolution. So the mural board that we have for you tonight has some of the background information that we have presented previously. I'm not planning to go through it, but we can refer to it tonight as we have our discussion. So we have things like the existing vision statement, the one that came out of the community visioning project that wrapped up earlier this year. We have some of the summaries from the community visioning project in terms of what the community had identified as priorities. I'll go through those in 1 minute. We have some of the visioning examples that we presented in September, and we also presented at the visioning workshop. So again, different elements of a vision statement, different ways to represent it graphically, and some different approaches that other communities have taken on visioning as well. We also have, I think, another good example we didn't present in September, but is the strategic vision for the Department of Community Development. It has a very brief vision statement and mission statement, but then some additional content at the bottom that provides some more specificity in terms of the direction of DCD and how they conduct their operations. I think it's pretty written in a pretty powerful way. So I think that's another example that we could refer to. And then just briefly want to remind you of some of the community priorities that came out of the community visioning project. The top 4 were improved infrastructure, environmental preservation, improved transportation, and parks, recreation, and open space. And then a summary of the community priority statements are represented in this graphic. We had a lot of discussion with the Planning Commission about this. There was some feeling that even though these are all priorities, maybe some of them are not matched correctly, so we could shuffle some of these around. This is not meant to be like a draft vision statement. It's really just context for the discussion tonight. So these are what the community represented in the community visioning project. And I think it's a number of things that the council's been discussing tonight and probably at many of their meetings. So things like connection to the natural environment, transportation options, character, services, cultural events, amenities, resilient infrastructure and social networks, housing, variety, choice, and affordability, and then being a diverse, inclusive, safe, and walkable community. And we very much want to build upon that past work and refine it as we move towards developing a new vision statement. So there's 3 exercises tonight for discussion purposes. We can deviate from those as needed. The first is to look at those themes that I just described and add anything that you think may be missing. If you recall from the presentation in September, I offered some of my own thoughts based on my experience working in Sammamish. In terms of what I think some of the key themes that are important to the community that may not be fully represented here. But we'd love to hear from you on that. Down in the bottom in the green are what we heard from the Planning Commission. So these, we did scrub most of the other comments. So, and again, we'll share those out, but we thought we would leave the themes here so that you could see what they came up with. We also asked the planning commissioners to send us their draft vision statements, and so we've started to get those in this week. We have those on the bottom of the mural board if we want to refer to those. Yeah.
Can you change the view so that the screen that you were looking at is bigger? I think you can eliminate the side things because I'm sorry, it's still really hard to read.
I can go like
All
that.
right, great, thank you, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I'm trying to. Yeah, no, I hear you. That's a good comment. Okay, so I will try not to move around too much. I won't move over to the other exercises, but basically it sort of builds upon layers of input. So we start with the themes, then we start with the big ideas. So the big ideas are how do we sort of start to make the themes sort of actionable? And then the last exercise is really how do we make these things happen? Because I think there are certain elements within the existing comp plan, like natural environment topics that are really, really strongly represented, certainly more so and more thoughtfully than in other communities that I've worked with on comp plans. But, some of those have not, been fully realized. And so how do we start to make a more actionable and implementable plan is the last exercise. So with that, I will stop talking and open it up for input on some additional key themes that you think should be represented in the new vision statement.
Councilmember Howe.
Thank you, Mayor. Something I picked up actually from Bainbridge when I was looking at them, the thing that is kind of interesting is we've got these different things, but how do we balance them all? So they have an inclusive statement that just states, our success at balancing the interdependent goals of environmental stewardship, economic development, and the needs of our people is evident in the many ways that we have of accommodating growth and addressing the impacts of climate change and conserved our environment. So what I thought was interesting about that statement is it pulled thematically from really key components into a very simple, short statement. It's on page 11 of their comp plan, I think. But I liked the fact that it hit environmental stewardship because they feel like Bainbridge people are noted for that. And I actually think that's us too. I think that that is our ethos, is that we have a lot of groups that are devoted to that, save this, save that. It all is the environmental stewardship part. So I think I'd love to see that in there somehow. The economic development piece, I know is a piece that we have mentioned before. And I'm going to be kind of stressing that a little bit because as we look at tax districts or things like that, ways to envision other revenue sources for the city for that sustainability component. So the sustainability is a thread that you can weave through not just what we want to do with our environment, but our finances as well. The other piece that isn't as obvious is actually something I picked up from Chicago, which was just efficient governance.
Yep. Yeah, those are all good.
We're just going to go this way. Deputy Mayor Lamb.
I had a few comments. I'm trying not to duplicate what you already did with the Planning Commission, simplify things. I'm a little concerned about the word tight-knit character. It feels very exclusionary, and I don't know what the right word is, perhaps welcoming, but I'm a little concerned about that word. I didn't see any mention of recreational opportunities. Everybody values the hiking trails here and the lakes, and so it'd be great if we had that. The other thing that I don't see is aspects about being future forward and forward thinking. I often think about how the town center plan has mentions about building LEED certified buildings, and the buildings that would go into it would, address climate change, et cetera. And it's amazing to me that 17 years ago, we seemed more visionary than we are now. And so I would really hope that our mission statement would capture that essence, that we still have that, visionary spirit.
Thank you.
Okay, I wasn't ready, so I'm going to move to Councilmember Stewart.
Oh, I see how it is.
Yeah. Well, I was like, because I could wordsmith those blue ones to death. I'm like, variety and choice, is that the same? Can we just do one, so please go.
No, you just want me to have to follow Councilmember Howe and Deputy Mayor Lamb.
Yeah,
Those are
that's
tough
true, 'cause they're
acts
the
to
smart
follow.
ones. Yeah.
So thank you for that. It's interesting that you raised that, Mayor, because because I was noticing, and Deputy Mayor Lamb brought it up, but I think it's really important. The very first, little blue sticky there is diverse, safe, inclusive, and walkable. It's interesting that those are all together. I like it, but I do think that those resonate with me, and I think those resonate with the community. I think when you talk about tight-knit character, and you talked about the concerns about the term tight-knit, I think if we want to talk about character, we need to define what we mean there so that we don't use it in a way that has been used to be exclusionary and to be really discriminatory. And so I want to make sure that if whatever that essence is supposed to be, let's understand it and make sure we're all really okay with that. I do like the idea of talking about, as we talk about welcoming, really being able to talk about creating spaces for us to gather, right, and create a sense of community. And that is kind of a theme that I can get behind and around. And again, in addition to the things that the other council members have said. So I don't know if you need us to like +1 things when you're going through this so you know which ones are things that more than one person supports, or do you just want us to add the new things? Because I don't want to be repetitive, but if that's important to you, I want to make sure.
I think just adding the new ones is the most important. And if
Okay.
you want to just state that you agree with another one, I think we can note that. And certainly the space for gathering, social connections has been brought up previously as well, so.
Great.
Good one.
I'd like us, if we're going to talk about, walkability, safety, walkability and connectivity, I like those. Again, and I think that kind of ties in with that creating the space, right? Creating a space and connecting those spaces so that we can gather, so that we can, not be walled off from our neighbors, but really get to know people and have that opportunity. I think that's really important. And then really emphasizing not just the connection to the natural environment, which is very important, and the recreation pieces, but the climate action, right? The dealing with climate change and really addressing that head on. And maybe that is part of what we need to talk about with resiliency as well, right? But really addressing that, because I think we need to be clear when we talk about sustainability or we talk about the environment, that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. And I do want us to be able to include aspects of that for everyone, but I do think we need to be clear that as we go through the comp plan efforts, right, we need to be addressing climate change and the climate resiliency pieces that are, as Senator Wellman pointed out, are now an inevitability. So, but I love this. I love most of these little blue stickies. I guess one of my questions was, you had 4 bullets, but then you had these blue stickies, which were from the community visioning. I didn't see a real connection between those other 4 bullets. So as long as we're talking about these blue stickies, that's fine. But there were 4 themes pulled out that I wasn't sure I understood how you got there.
Yeah, the 4 themes came directly from the community visioning report. So if you look at that or the presentation, I think that was given to summarize it. They just listed 4 things, and that was just taken directly from that. I think it came out of the survey.
Okay, but then where did these blue stickies come from?
There was some additional community priority statements that were a little bit longer that were also in there, and they were just truncated versions of those community priority statements.
Gotcha. Okay. And I love that the bookends of these blue stickies, we talk about diversity and inclusion, and we talk about housing, variety, choice, and affordability. Those kind of tie rather nicely together. Thanks.
Could I ask one question?
Oh, yeah.
In terms of the, creating space for people to gather, what sort of spaces, do you have any sort of spaces that you're kind of envisioning, or how that might connect to, say, land use patterns or the town center or some of the, commercial areas? Because I think, where I tend to see that happen, it was mentioned like Bainbridge Island, that happens in Winslow, it happens in their neighborhood centers. Certainly can happen in their parks and other programming, but I think, just kind of thinking of the broader comprehensive plan, if you have any additional thoughts on.
I love that question. Yes, pre-pandemic, this space here, right, our city hall and our upper and lower commons, they can be packed at every event that we hold. So our farmers markets, all of those events, people are hungry for spaces like that. So while I think our parks are an important part of that, and I think we talked about prioritizing some of our ball fields, I think that's a place where communities are formed and, you gather together. But I think more spaces, whether it be, connecting the town center here, creating those gathering spaces in the town center where we can have large and small gatherings where people don't have to leave the city necessarily to gather with friends, right? I mean, if I want to meet my friends for, meals and drinks and stuff, I often have to leave the city because we don't have a lot of those options here. At least if it's after 8:30 in the evening, there's not really any place here that's going to stay open, so you can go grab a late dinner. So I think that there are a variety of those, but I think having, an extension of our community gathering spaces for our big community events, as well as places for our teens and our tweens to gather, where there are things to do, not just a park. Maybe there can be a park adjacent, but where there are activities and a place that's intended for them to gather. Right now, they gather at a Starbucks and then they hang out in a parking lot. That is neither safe nor inclusive nor good in any way. So I think having those types of community gathering adjacent to parks, adjacent to some of those, maybe restaurants and other types of social gathering spaces is what people are really hungry for.
Great, thank you.
Pun intended.
Appreciate that.
Okay. I just wanted to say I watched the Planning Commission meeting from the other night. I found it really informative. We have some great planning commissioners who came up with some great ideas. I did want to mention Mike Brasco and Kerry Bosworth, and their suggestions for the vision statement were really interesting. I also liked Mark Bachman's suggestion that everyone should go home and write their own version of the statement and send it in. I thought that was very useful too, and I think I will probably do the same. I have a bunch of things when it comes to the key themes, and some of it may be ideas that I picked up from having watched the Planning Commission, so I want to make sure I'm not usurping anybody else's idea, and I'm hoping it fits in with this, but I'll just give you what I have and you can decide where it fits. So looking at key themes, one of the things that came to mind in looking at what you already had on the board were housing choices and alternatives to suit the many stages of life. And I know we have that in there too, but I do think it's important to put in about the many stages of life that hopefully we will all live long enough to walk through. Safe walking to school. With the amount of schools that we have in the city, there are parts of the schools are totally walkable by sidewalk and some are not. Strong affirmative relationships with our neighboring cities. I'd like to see somewhere in there that we are really actively pursuing those relationships more than we have before. Forging stronger relationships with our own cities' organizations, like our nonprofits. And it was noted, I think, by Chair Bachman about there's so many things that we want to do as a city, but maybe we don't have to go and reinvent the wheel. And maybe it doesn't always mean that the city has to outlay resources and money, but maybe we could partner with our own organizations here in the city. For example, we have a fabulous Rotary, we have a YMCA, we have Kiwanis, we have senior groups, we have Chamber of Commerce, we have a university down the street. Partnering with our youth and our seniors who are really kind of the core volunteers in our city. They are the core groups who are available to volunteer. Everybody in the middle is very busy working. Right. And that are we engaging those populations in a way that they know they can come volunteer and know where they can volunteer. That maybe this is more with communications and it might come further into this project, but the other thing that occurred to me was promoting our own wins within the city. So, and we have a lot of wins. I'm not talking about wins that the city themselves have when we write a fantastic piece of policy or when we do something like that. I'm talking about wins within the city, like when our football teams win state, when our cheer teams are going to nationals. Do we promote that? Do we talk about that? And I think that that's something that we need to kind of become better at through our communication. And does the city even know about it? So how are we kind of getting all that information together? Offering new ways to volunteer in the city, new advisory groups, maybe new commissions, and getting that information out to our residents that this is a new way that you can become involved with your city. Actively promoting the preservation of current housing stock and helping our residents with that. Variety of local-based businesses, encouraging residents to shop locally and reducing our car trips. Expanding community ride program to the whole of our city limits. Expanding housing density in all of our mixed-use development areas in our city. I think we need more reference in there to climate action and sustainable living, like promoting green and sustainable living practices and behaviors. So it's not necessarily that we need people to go buy new things or do a whole lot of really difficult things, but start looking at our own behaviors as we're living and as we go about our daily lives and how we can live a more sustainable, climate action orientated life. And I think that was all I had on that one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Just say +1, +1, +1 to everything. Thank you. My list is kind of short. I think it starts getting shorter as we go this way. But can we have a bookstore in Sammamish? We actually do not have a bookstore in Sammamish. Yeah, I think I love reading, and I know many people in this city also love reading. So I love our library, don't get me wrong, but I would love to have a bookstore and a post office maybe. But that aside, I want all of us to feel safe in this city, that we care about people. I want our city to be a place where ideas flourish and it can be an innovation hub. One thing about Sammamish, which many of us know, is that it's pretty large, and the south and the north kind of feel disconnected, or the east and west. And I would like to see how can we connect and really build one city, so that, it really, what maybe themes can we draw from each part of the city, which makes us feel whole and not just different neighborhoods. I would like to see Sammamish as a place where arts and culture thrives, and I think arts and culture, was it there somewhere already? Or maybe not. Let's see. I think healthy. I think I want all of us to be healthy. And health includes, climate change, it includes walkability, I think it includes a lot of things. It includes mental health. But those were some of the things I'd like to see in our vision.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think the only thing I don't see in there right off the bat is education. That we got highly educated people here. We have good school systems, so grow that. I think it's the second sticker up there, but the nature, connecting with nature, but it's really that whole idea that nature is kind of like our indigenous coastal Salish people, how they treated nature and the environment would be more to my liking, so that the environment is something that where everyone can live, that we respect, and the rights, that nature too has rights in a sense, that not only do I have rights as a human here, but the wildlife also has those rights. So how you put that, it's really that nature, the environment, which includes all living animals. Mm-hmm. We're trying to protect and preserve that as a community that sits on the border of the urban growth boundary, because they're coming into our city. So why don't we protect those? I think the last thing so those are two. The third thing that I think is really important, especially going forward for, say, at least the next 10 years, and the vision statement does, I know it encompasses the next 20 years, But when I look at the next 10 years for Sammamish and have a vision for it, I think the home ownership is missing out of this. I don't see it in there. So when you talk about housing, I don't know if it's not as specific as I would get as into, I think people need to solve some of the world's biggest challenges, or one of the biggest challenges is the wealth gap. And so if you're going to actually work to solve that problem, then home ownership is one way to go about it. So when we talk about affordable housing or cottage homes, or are they condos, or however you're going to build the housing, but my point is it needs to be home ownership. It doesn't do us any good to build a bunch of apartments and make them affordable, and then it makes some conglomerate or some LLC or some fund capital group wealthy. That would be against my vision. My vision would be home ownership. So those are the three big things when I look at Sammamish. We are a residential community currently and have been, and we are seen as one until at least 2050 in the region. So embrace that and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, these are really great. I think just the main thing for me is connectivity. So whether that's through the city, whether that's the community being connected, I think just like all of these comments are so great. And I think that's kind of what I look forward to most, is being able to connect with my community, being able to connect with my neighbors and other weird pockets of, whether it's a cul-de-sac or a different, I don't have a neighborhood with a name, but I'm one of the few. But I just think connectivity for all, so. I appreciate it. And I don't have any more, but I know you have more.
Yeah, we can
exercises.
certainly go back, and this has been fantastic. And of course, you're always welcome to email anything you may thought of after.
And do we have this board? Is this like a
We can provide it, so we can you can share it digitally.
Cool.
We can also export the frames as a PDF.
Cool, because I see Deputy Mayor Lamb has them. Oh, that's smart. It's very smart.
You can take screen grabs,
That's
but
why I was like, okay, yeah.
we can get you a higher quality and
Yeah.
more official version.
No, I would love that, just to see
Yes, I mean,
thoughts.
sometimes we've done these exercises and then we'll share the board out and let people add to it themselves. You can actually run these mural boards so that you could all actually be writing your own comments right now in real time. So it's meant to be interactive, and this, I'm just kind of running the board for tonight, but there's lots of ways that we can share information and get your feedback, so. It's probably a tool we'll use at other times in the process as other issues come up, or other topics come up, I should say. So we've added a lot of themes, so we can refer back to them, but they don't all necessarily need to be nested under the themes, but I think some of the examples we showed in visions of other cities had things like big ideas, things that sort of build from the themes but are a little bit more specific, right? And so like one, I think, easy example was one of the communities I was working with really wanted to have their community be a place where people could have the opportunity to live there and work there, because there was a lot of people that lived there that were going outside, a lot of people from outside coming to the community to work, and that was really evident in the data. One of their other big ideas was they wanted to build their downtown. They had done a downtown plan. They don't have a downtown. That was a goal. So those are just, you don't have to have big ideas that are either of those, but just that's kind of the level of detail that we would be sort of looking at. So if a theme is climate change, what would be a big idea to address climate change, And again, not to say that all of these things will necessarily get in the vision, but I think, again, we're starting to get more specific of how we can start to achieve some of these themes and the priorities of the community. So that's the exercise here. And then the next one will be more specific about how do we make it happen. So it could be things like funding or, partnerships. And we can share some of the things that the Planning Commission came up with, but that's the third one. So with that, I'll open it back up for comments.
Yeah, I mean, we could do everyone, or we could just do hands. I don't know if everyone has comments for these.
Yeah, these would be things that come out of the vision. So maybe they're not in the core vision statement, but if you read the vision and you said, okay, I prioritize connectivity, what's my big idea? We're going to connect 50% of the dead-end streets in Sammamish are going to be connected with at least non-motorized connections, you know, something like that. Again, we can parse the details and figure out what makes sense from a reasonable or a logistical standpoint. So don't worry too much about that, but that's sort of the thing is like, what would, you know, if we were going to pick some things to focus on for this effort. You know, we have two new elements that we're doing, climate change and economic development. Maybe there's a big idea around some of those potentially. Housing's obviously a big topic. Environment, habitat, always important priority in Sammamish. So
I'm going to go actually with hands raised, just because I will not be ready by the time. Councilmember Howe?
So what I was thinking about for big ideas has to do with accretive partnerships, that we are the city that could absolutely take a partnership, and it's more than a 1 + 1 = 2, it equals 10. We maximize our partnerships, whether that's an interlocal agreement, whether that's a partnership with a regional committee for YRA 8, and it has to do with salmon restoration, whether it's a climate change initiative that we've partnered with someone else, or we've partnered with Arch for affordable housing. So regardless of what partnership we engage in or endeavor to get involved with, we are the force multiplier. We punch above our weight. I'm using as many metaphors as I can to use up time so that Kaylee has time to actually come up with something important. I think that is something that we don't talk about that partnership and the forging of the partnerships with not just residents, but that would be a partnership with residents, right? But a partnership with our business community, where we want, how we want that to grow, or those that are, you know, have different development interests here. How do we partner with people? Because it flows back into just good governance and communication and transparency. So to me, that all just kind of ties back together.
yeah, it's definitely a theme that we've heard in the Planning Commission, and I think we've been going through some of the checklists that the state and the regional planning agencies put out to kind of look at your comp plan relative to some of the new policies, and the lack of emphasis on partnerships in the comp plan was one of the things that we have identified as a potential gap. So,
And I would say the only thing I would add to that is just that having measurement, so that we measure everything.
yeah.
I would love it if we said we measure everything. You're sweating. I can see you, David, right now. There's a bead of sweat. It's just trickling right there. And I understand that because we don't have great tools for doing that, but I would like to see us invest in them. I don't want staff doing it. I want tools that just do it. So that's my big vision, is how do we say we want to do something, well, how good are we really? How good are we really?
Yeah. Yep. Appreciate those comments.
Councilmember O'Farrell?
Okay. I'm hoping I kind of answered this question for you. I'm not sure if what I'm going to give you is just more fluff, or if I'm really answering the questions, but I'll give you what I've got anyway. So what I've kind of put down here is something that Councilmember Stewart had just talked about, and you guys had an interaction about, gathering space opportunities. So increased opportunities to gather as a community at either formal events or informally, like at shopping centres or at civic areas. And I think very much when I think about that, I think about the green spine that we have in our town centre plan, and really kind of developing that concept, connecting, and as a result, connecting our trails with our sidewalks and being able to move around whether we want to call this our downtown area, and walking around that downtown area much more easily. I know we're all about our trails and everything, and the trails are lovely, but I tend to love Met Market and those kinds of areas too. I spend a lot of time down there, so I think being able to walk around that whole area. My kids go to have been going to Skyline High School, and what one of the greatest things was being able to walk from Skyline over to the library, down to the YMCA, and then down the hill to Met Market to get a snack, and having that all walkable without needing anyone to pick you up and drive you anywhere, that it was just very community minded. They can go with a group of friends and do all those kinds of things. And it was safe because they had really good footpaths and crossing areas, safe crossing areas. So I think a lot about that. The other thing I think about is when we talk about being a tight-knit community and getting to know our neighbours and all that kind of thing, I think about how are our neighbourhoods connected with each other. We're a city of 735 cul-de-sacs. It's a lot of cul-de-sacs. And cul-de-sacs are a great idea, and I understand why we go with them. But also, they also cut you off from your neighbours, but literally behind you and to your left and your right, who are not part of your cul-de-sac. Now, I know we maybe don't want to start building roads through cul-de-sacs to connect things, but can we walk between the neighbourhoods? I like what we've done at Highcroft, where you're able to walk through Highcroft and then come out onto 228 a little higher up and then walk through those other neighbourhoods behind them. You can't drive, but you can walk. And so there are other ways of accessing the city, be it on bike or be it on foot, where you can get around. And that's kind of how you build community and get to see all these other neighborhoods and see, oh, I didn't know this was here, and getting to know your city much better when you can make it on foot. The other kind of thing I stuck in here, I'm not really sure where it goes, stormwater infrastructure meeting the needs of our city requirements and our changing climate. So that and I know that that's on our work plan, a lot of stormwater retrofit, but that's really important to kind of, especially with our changing climate, that type of infrastructure. Because when we talk about infrastructure, I think oftentimes all we seem to think about are roads. There's a lot more to infrastructure than that. So stormwater is part of it, housing is part of infrastructure. So keeping in mind when we talk about infrastructure, that our stormwater is really important. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments.
Councilmember Trine?
So under connect to the natural environment, the first thing you just do is put in wildlife corridors and the maps into the comprehensive plan. It's real simple. They were there at one point. King County has them, so that's really just reinstate them back. That's a really easy one. I think for the safety part of it, we really need to do something about the choke points to leave the city, getting off the plateau to the north and to the south. So if we don't have something about that as a big idea to achieve connectivity, then I think we're making a mistake there, or we need to at least put it under the guise of this is a safety issue, and we make that a priority, which it is a priority for the city. And then I think, come on, Trine, you were thinking about it, and then character. So under the idea of, and understanding that there are a lot of different definitions, I agree with Councilmember Stewart, there's a lot, what do we mean by character? So we need to give that meaning, but I think underneath that, Sammamish lacks this, and I don't know if we're going to have the ability to accomplish this this 10-year cycle of our comp plan, but if there is some way to put in design standards at some point here, I know we don't want to be Leavenworth, right? But Leavenworth has design standards, and that's why Leavenworth looks like it does. Shoreline has design standards in their plans that make Shoreline the unique city that it is. Yep. And so we lack that. I mean, we've brought some of that into it already, but it's at a super high level. And I'm okay if that is the step we're going to say, okay, this is the step we moving forward to meet that character goal.
We do have it as a topic in phase 3 potentially to look at additional design standards, and we've written lots of design standards, most recently for Bainbridge Island and for North Highline, which is just south of Seattle. And they don't have to be like obviously like Leavenworth or have a theme, you can work with the community to find out what's important. We're working in Redmond right now on design standards as well. So it's definitely something, that relatively easy to move forward, and it can have a big impact, going forward for new development.
We would, at a minimum, want a high level of design standard that would apply across the city. Generally, as you start to get into more refined design standards, they're more granular and they're done on neighborhood levels. That's also something to look at with connectivity is in order to plan appropriately for connectivity for pedestrians, non-motorized, you would want to look down into the neighborhood planning level. One thing that we would like to explore with your direction is to add some policy language to the comp plan going forward that directs us to do resistance mapping across the city to identify where there are large areas of east, west, north, south resistance, and where there are opportunities for connections to be made with adjoining cul-de-sacs. And then to direct us to add a policy that would initiate a program of acquisition of easements to provide connections between those cul-de-sacs, where we would work with property owners to acquire easements in order to put in trail connections between those cul-de-sacs. And that would provide a lot of mobility in the city at the pedestrian and non-motorized level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
So I had a few things to add, but I had a question first. Thank you for sending the supplemental information. I think the Tacoma vision statement was in it, which I thought was really helpful. And I liked how they had values, and there were 4 of them. Are we going to have something similar?
We certainly could. I mean, we haven't gotten to the point of deciding exactly what would be in there. So if there's a desire to have something like values, it certainly is an option, yeah.
One of the comments that we got from the Planning Commission was that we could design a vision statement in many different ways, visual, text block. One of the comments, though, was that the visual component of it tends to change over time, that things are the current trend of how we present things visually is this way, but that could change over the 10 or 20 year horizon, and that a text block, the words remain words. Right. So the focus of the Planning Commission was to focus on the text block. The council could ask us to present the vision in addition to the text block. We could add other components. Some of those examples that are shown have different ways of presenting other areas of emphasis, like values. So really, I think it's trying to find what's best for Sammamish. But I think what we got from the commission was, hey, let's focus first on that essential text block. And once we've got there or agreed on that, let's start to figure out what else we can add peripherally around that text block in a different matter of presentation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I bring this up because I think the values are really important. It's how we behave as a city, and it's how we're going to do these items. So it's hard for me in some ways to come up with these items without putting a lens, the lens that the city should be looking through. And how it behaves, basically. And I liked how Tacoma had equity in there, like to take a look at all these policies that we're creating through the lens of equity and accountability. And this kind of made me think about how in the previous few years, we've kind of shirked our regional responsibilities. And I mean this in terms of like our growth targets, for example. And so, we have this reputation that we don't take responsibility. We expect other cities to take the responsibility. So, we have a mission statement, but at some point, it wasn't viewed in terms of we have a responsibility regionally, and that, we're committed to doing our fair share. And so I bring up the values because I would hope that within the value statements, that within the 4 value words that we choose, that, one of them is that we are committed regionally and that we are going to do our fair share. And so that in the future, whoever is on council, we don't have a situation where, we are doing something that is, I think, kind of that has been detrimental to our city.
Thank you.
Oh, I did have a few things, sorry. Under resilient infrastructure, I wanted to add broadband fiber network. I think it's really important to set ourselves up for the future. I think I've mentioned this a few times in other situations. Under housing variety, choice, and affordability, to add zoning. I think that probably would be under development, economic development as well. And options to walk, drive, bike, and take transit. None of that is going to happen unless we have a transportation master plan. So those are my items. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart?
Thank you. I love the idea of having some value words or value statements as kind of, guideposts. I guess I misunderstood the ask. I came up with big ideas like every person who we need to work here can afford to live here, right? So we've got all these people work at our schools. We learned in the pandemic that, we never considered them essential before, but all of the people who work in the grocery stores were pretty darn essential to us. So all of the people that we effectively ask to come and work here and provide the services that we rely on should be able to afford to live here. So that's one of my big ideas. Another one is that we actually lead the region in innovative solutions for our region's biggest challenges. And that would include affordable housing and climate change, right? Again, it's been touched on by others. We have a very engaged and educated population here. We also have quite a bit of wealth. So there's the only thing really preventing us from leading the region in innovation is maybe our lack of vision and our lack of willing to kind of take a shot on goal. And then every person who lives here should be able to safely get to trails or transit. And when I say trails, I really mean sidewalks or bike paths as well, right? But everybody that's here, right? Because if we really want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we really want to reduce vehicle miles traveled, we really have to provide viable alternatives. So those are my 3 big ideas of things that, why not take a shot on goal? If this is really supposed to be a vision statement, it's not supposed to be like necessarily, well, I counted all the pennies today, right? It's really looking to the future. And then I don't think we really, I don't know if we're going sort of bigger, broader, or more specific, but I don't think we've talked about, somebody mentioned regional commitments, another regional commitment that we haven't been working on, and I know we are now, and I'm really excited. Things like our greenhouse gas reduction targets, right? We committed to greenhouse gas reductions in 2012. And until now, I don't think we've actually done anything to work on those. So I think really looking at all of those commitments that we've made and actually, again, taking that shot on goal of how we're going to meet those. Another one, I kind of, just trying to think of those, I don't know if they're value statements or value words, but, I think of equity, I think of inclusion, I think of the environment, I think of the future, right? What are we doing to create a better future, right? The Boy Scouts say we're supposed to leave a place better than we found it. And so that's not just about counting the number of trees, but, do we have all the things that people need to live here? Are we building buildings that are more environmentally friendly and sustainable? And then I think about all generations. Somebody mentioned, I think, Councilmember O'Farrell talked about our youth and our seniors are our biggest volunteer pools. They're also the people that tend to have less voice in what's happening. They have, maybe less economic power sometimes, but they really are the heart of our community. And that brings us back to being connected and creating a sense of space and a place where people can gather. Can we create a heart to our city? And maybe that also addresses Councilmember Indipuri's thought of bringing the city together. Can we create a place where seniors can gather and eat and drink and socialize and do activities? And can they get there? Can we get them there without having to have a car? Can they have a place to gather? Can we get our youth to places where they can have activities and they don't drive either? Also, doesn't hurt that there are a lot of studies that when our older generations and our younger generations intermingle, it's actually better for everybody. Everybody gains from that. I think it's 7 adults. Every child should have 7 adults in their lives to help them grow to be a decent, well-balanced human being. And our older generations, they benefit immensely from being around the youth. So creating gathering spaces that aren't segregated, but are truly inclusive. So those are my big ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Councilmember Ndipuri?
Thank you, Mayor. My ideas might not be so big, but I think I know Councilmember Stewart mentioned sidewalks. I think connection to the natural environment, I think it comes in that. Also options to walk, bike, drive, take transit. I would like to see at least good sidewalks, especially around schools, so kids can walk to school or at least have safe paths. So I think that would be like a specific goal to have sidewalk connect to schools. Yes, thank you. I would like maybe at least 25% of our parks to have art in them. I know Anjali's back there, and maybe we already have, but I would like to see more of it. So I think that would fall under creating social networks and just creating a welcoming community. I would like to potentially address the last mile problem with transit. I think I am very curious to see if we can have public-private partnerships. So in case I do want to take the bus to wherever I want to go, but I don't have to drive to a park and ride, but maybe if I could just get a ride to the bus stop, so that would be great. And then I know Councilmember Treen had mentioned education, but I feel like it's really important for us to have some programming around educating our residents in Sammamish. And I know some cities have like a citizen academy where the city holds classes for teaching people what their rights are, how does the city operate. So I would really love to see that.
All right, I am last. So I love, David, that you were mentioning about the potential study, for connectivity. I will buy an electric golf cart and I want to be able to go everywhere. I'm going to try it. No, but I really love that idea and just the thoughts of how we can be, how we can make those connections and what we can and can't do. I love broadband, also underground power lines. I'm just thinking huge, right? Yeah. I want to be able to keep our power here. But no, these are all really great. And I think I would like to be the leader on something really cool. I mean, obviously we're not going to have the climate pledge arena here, but something amazing and, really state of the art, zero carbon emissions, something cool. I would love that.
Fantastic. That was awesome. I did write a golf cart ordinance in one community, so it's not out of the question. Yep, electric golf carts. Okay, we're ready to move on to the last one. Okay, great. So again, lots of big ideas, lots of themes, lots of challenging issues we want to address. What are some of the things that we need to look at to make these happen? We've talked about partnership. I've heard talks about funding, economic development. I'm sure there are others. So open it up for comments on how we can make it happen.
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
I just had one. I'd really like us to work more with our residents in terms of having more commissions. I mean, there's so many people that live in this area that work in, the high-tech firms, and they have so much, they could bring to the table. I know we're talking about a sustainability commission, but an economic development, I can't even remember if we've even talked about having one of those, but I just think that it would just be a huge asset and we could get more work done.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember O'Farrell?
Thank you. My big idea here, and this is really about better communication between the city and our public, and communicating out what these priorities are and helping the public to understand what this comp plan really is. And I know we have done a lot of work with the website and et cetera, but continuing that work, I think we're missing a hard copy newsletter, and I know we've had like our quarterly newsletter that we have in the past done, and I'm hoping that will come back in the future. Okay, awesome. So, because I think people really do rely on that. We don't have a newspaper anymore, and I know we're supposedly moving away from newspapers, but there is something about it, and I still think people still like it, even if it's not an everyday newspaper that's dropped in the driveway of your home or in the letterbox. I think we all like some kind of a traditional piece of communication that we don't have to jump on a screen, because I think we all have screen overload at this point in our lives. So I think greater communication from our city, letting our community know what's going on. Again, like what I talked about, talking about our wins, not just at a civic level and whatever fabulous new piece of policy we just passed, but what our community has been winning about, what are our youth doing, what are our seniors doing, and really using that newsletter as a vehicle to promote what the city and what its residents are doing, and in a bid to bring us more closely together. Then the other thing I was thinking about, very much what Deputy Mayor Lamb had just said about maybe a climate action commission, bringing more members of the community in to kind of help, for them to help us make decisions on those particular topics. That was it.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Councilmember Howell?
So kind of along that theme of the human capital component, I can give you a concrete example of what people have actually done here in terms of being volunteers, but coordinating it through the city. So we have a trail system now that goes 28 miles around the Sammamish Plateau. That's a big idea that started a long time ago, and it was a brainchild of former parks commissioners, actually, that have worked with DNR, worked with King County Parks, worked with Sammamish Parks to try to figure out easements and different ways of getting that access. We're super close, but a lot of this was volunteer-led. So it's the big idea has to capture and fire people's imaginations. So it's something that captivates, holds them, transfixes them, and so that they're willing to devote that energy, effort, and the most precious of things, time, to actually seeing something through. And this process for the Emerald Necklace has taken years to do, but very close to completion. So it's just a stunning example of what like-minded individuals across different jurisdictions are able to pull off by just doing it.
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, I definitely have had that experience working with other communities and seeing the difference in effect between community groups that are very organized and collaborative with the city. I mean, one example I had was we were doing a downtown streetscape project, and we were getting towards the construction phase, and a community group that was very vested in doing landscaping in the community and managing all of those resources came to us and said, you have a very nice landscape plan, but we'd like to make it ours and design it and install it. And it was sort of risky on the city's part to be like, well, we're going to take this away from, the formal design team and the contractor and just let people go out and do this. But we said, this is a great opportunity. So we did it. We saved about $30,000, and most of the landscaping was edible, and they've won awards for it, and it's curated, and it's constantly, maintained, and because we'd put the infrastructure in. So that's just like a small example, but again, it speaks to the power of collaboration and what can be achieved if you have dedicated people, that are committed to improving their cities. So appreciate that.
Councilmember Napure.
So I think I really echo the ideas about communication and collaboration with people. I think one of the frustrations that I've seen from folks is the speed at which we execute on certain plans. So it feels like we have a lot of plans in the city, but how do we execute on that? So I think if we have to, make these visions and big ideas happen, I think we have many of them. How do we execute and then be able to socialize on what we're executing? I think for me, that would be something that I would really love to see happen and maybe communicated better. I know some of the really small ideas is, again, how do you engage the community? Having a competition or having, I think Deputy Director Haley talked about that earlier last week, is, how do we get different parts of the community? And then our youth are our biggest asset in this city. How do we get them engaged in the vision of this city? And then our institutions like the school and the universities, how do we get them engaged?
Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
You've already heard about communication and education for the community. I think that's important, right? I think getting the facts and the data out to the community and helping people understand what the consequences are. It's really easy, right, to think, we've heard taglines like less traffic, more trees. And of course, who doesn't want less traffic and more trees? That's a great idea. However, there are realities, right? And how do we understand those? Like, the principal at Eastlake High School, when he was first hired, he couldn't afford to live here. He actually qualified for affordable housing and ended up having to live farther out. That's not a low-paid job, and he still couldn't afford to live here. So I think, we have to make sure people understand that if we start with the premise of every human being deserves a healthy, safe place to live, and we want to protect the environment, and we want to deal with sustainability, what are all those trade-offs? What are all the things we have to do? So I think communication and creating more opportunities for more people to get more deeply involved, to start to understand the complexities and really help us with those trade-offs. None of the things we do are easy and straightforward. They always require some sort of an either or. And so the more voices we can hear from, the better. I do think there's way more opportunity to engage the youth. We are experiencing, I think, as a council, more and more youth reaching out directly to us. They are concerned, they are worried, and they're smart, and they're getting things done. They do have the time, or at least maybe more energy, maybe not more time. But I think that there are a lot of opportunities there. So I think we have to do more with communication and education and really getting the information out there. I think we have to make sure people trust us. I think creating a trust and transparency space is going to be important so that people want to get engaged and believe that their engagement matters. And I think the other ways we do this is, again, we have to set these, we create a vision that we can all be inspired by, as Councilmember Howe talked about, but then we have to go back to our priorities, create some key results that we want to achieve in a very particular time frame, and then kind of start marching towards that. I do think there are some huge opportunities to get more deeply engaged on some of these areas with school groups. There are, I think, 30 or 40 clubs and groups at each of the high schools, and we have 3 of them. And these kids address all the issues we're trying to tackle here. So how can we tap into that? How can we, maybe we don't just take what they say and go implement it. Maybe we aren't quite that trusting in terms of our landscaping projects, but we could certainly get them to go do research. We could certainly get them to submit ideas if we actually engaged with those leadership clubs, with those environmental clubs, with those you name it clubs, right? We have running clubs and trail clubs, right? So all the things that we're trying to address here, they're out there living it. Ask them to put on paper what are their ideas and how would they go fund it. You'd be amazed. These kids know. They're raising money and working through all of the red tape and all of the government agencies to put solar panels on the Skyline Stadium. The kids are leading that. They're doing all the work. They're doing it all. So I think we do have untapped human capital there that we could tap into. And I think that's how we get it done, is that deep engagement. Thanks.
Councilmember Trine?
So in regards to how do we make the vision happen, the vision statement, I imagine that's what you're talking about. So please move it back to the Planning Commission, which I believe that's where it's headed next, right?
Yeah, Planning Commission, and it'll come back.
Yeah,
your
thank
way.
you. That's where it needs to go, and have them continue to hash it out. I like where they're headed for the most part. So let that process play out. Second part of that would be that staff, so Scott, really this is more towards you too, is that staff needs to stay focused on the comp plan, the work that needs to be done on the comp plan as it continues to move through the process over the next year. So we need to stay focused on that. City manager, manage. I think that would help us have some of these big ideas happen. And then I think to follow up on that, then the council, let the city manager do his job and stop creating distractions that are taking him away from actually doing his job. So I'd definitely make those some priorities when it comes to the vision statement, which should finalize here at some point. So bring it home. That's the other part, right? Bring the vision statement home, bring something forward. I'm probably not going to agree wholeheartedly with the vision statement, but guess what? If I was writing the vision statement, there'll be somebody on this council who wouldn't agree with me on the full scope of the vision statement anyway, too. So bring something forward so we can have it direct that comprehensive plan work. As far as the big ideas to make those things happen, again, I think a couple council members have mentioned this, but the having boards and commissions that can help us, I think is not a bad idea. I do understand that requires facilitation by staff members, but I do think that as we hire the people that are going to be hired or filling those positions, that some of those boards and commissions can actually, we'll see them actually start and be a part of it, which would help us out. As far as some of the big ideas is just having the will, I'll call it, the will to just do it. So when I talk about putting the corridors into the comp plan, that's just the will of the council. That's just the will of the staff to actually bring that forward. That's a big idea, but it could happen. If we wanted to have a safe sidewalk program, it's the will of this council that we can make that happen, right? Pass a policy then, right? So direct the city manager to have staff bring us that policy forward. That's work that can happen. Now, if it's at the expense of distracting us from the comp plan, don't bring it forward. I don't need stuff coming forward to us that's going to just distract us, take our time while we're sitting here on the dais to make decisions to do the business of the city. If it's distracting us, then we need to table it, or we need to just let it move down the road another year, because we just don't have the time, the bandwidth, and the energy to do it. So if these big ideas, we narrow it down to the ones that we actually know that we can do, then let's just, with that will and that confidence, move those things forward. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to drag, I'm going to offer my own comments as well, even though I don't want to keep dragging this on. I think, of course, I really lean on staff for help. Like, you guys definitely know what's going on more than I do as far as like putting things into action. So if there are big things that we as a council are missing, I would love any help, advice, or from your experience even of how to get kind of things put in motion. I mean, I understand how things work, but if there are other ideas, I think, you know, when I think it looks like communication is a huge thing between us and residents. I used to be a public information officer on fires, but people were actually interested in that, you know, when you're in their little towns. But, you know, a big thing for me was, you know, we had somebody attached to that incident. So I don't know who the contact is for this vision statement. I'm sure it's somebody, and I'm sure it's probably even in our packet, but having that contact, and it was, I know we have a reader board out front, you know, but we had like fire bulletins all around town. We would change them every day. You know, that takes a lot of work, and I get that, but just getting that engagement back and forth and getting people interested, because I don't think a lot of people come to City Hall and read our TV right there, but it's, I mean, some might, you know, if they're walking through City Hall or like on their walk through the Commons, but it's a huge challenge, and it really, it's probably something that every city has an issue with. So, I think I definitely trust the staff. I think we're headed in a great direction. I'm really excited to see what Planning Commission brings back to us. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If I could add one thing, just listening here, and over the last 7 years, I've listened to a lot of conversations in this room, talked to a lot of citizens, talked to a lot of neighbors. And one thing that strikes me that's really important in trying to make big ideas happen is, what do we do about those that feel they're being left behind? And how do we bridge that gap? Because that really is where things get slowed down and where we have to take another look at how to do something, because we're stronger together. And I really like what I'm seeing here, because this is really getting at that connection, that sharing of information, that we all need to make decisions that are in the best interest of the community. But there will be some that will feel, whether rightfully or not, are feeling like they're being left behind. And how do we address that so that they're not lined up here at the podium talking to you about the ways in which the proposed big idea is going to ruin their life?
Councilmember Napure?
Sorry, I think, David, maybe the time is now, or maybe I can have an offline conversation. I'm just curious to know what you mean by when people feel like they're left behind, like in which manner. So I would just like some clarification on that.
That often we have things that are proceeding and are following what we feel is in the best interest of the community at large, but there are people that are impacted by it. And there are real impacts from some of the actions that we do take. How do we mitigate that? How do we minimize that so that the impact is addressed as much as we can address it? There will ultimately be someone who will be impacted by the things that we do, but how do we address that so that we don't completely stall out on what we're doing and are able to keep things moving forward so that we can continue to build a community?
Deputy Mayor Lamb?
I just wanted to kind of add on to that, is that I often see when, people do have complaints, that staff does a really good job with following up directly. And, so much of, people's frustrations are when they're not being heard. So I do think that staff does, do an admirable job in reaching out when they need to.
And we do make mistakes, so, we definitely learn from those, so we appreciate that feedback as well.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, thanks, David. I know you get a lot of those, and you deal with a lot of those challenges. I think it's important too, and I've really tried to work on this over the years, is our word choice and the language we choose, right? So I love this discussion we've had today. We talk about inclusion. We're throwing out, we're grabbing all of the ideas so that we make sure people don't feel left behind. I think it's important that we don't talk about, there's right ways or wrong ways, or there are different camps, or there are these people or those people. I think when we continue to use words like the community and, pulling in all the groups, I think when we talk about it that way, we're going to think about it that way, and we're going to be a lot less likely to leave people behind. And I think when we pick out the vision and we pick out the things we're trying to aim for, and we have those things, we're going to find out that we're not really as different as we thought we were. I think our goals and our aims are often very similar, and we can find ways to include everyone in that, on that journey. So I'm hopeful as we choose this vision statement, because it is a text block, as you called it, that we are careful with how we choose those words to make it feel like everyone is included. Thanks.
Councilmember Howe?
Just to follow onto that just really quickly, it's, I think the reason why some people feel left behind is that they don't feel heard. They feel invisible and they don't exist, and their point of view is negated. And is as invisible as they are. So part of that complete and thorough communication means listing out, here's the other things we considered, and the reason why we're not proceeding on this is because. And I think that we can just, put a lot of things, at least a little bit, to rest by just being clear. But we did think about it. We weren't crazy. We did think about it. And this is what happened. And it doesn't have to be a long, diatribe like I'm doing right now. It can just be really short and sweet and to the point. So just complete, holistic communication.
All right, I do not see any other hands.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great, yeah, thank you. I didn't know if you had anything else in closing statements.
Not really. I will just make one comment, which is I think you guys are right on target in terms of talking about communication. I often get asked this, say on a new project or where, some other previous effort went sideways, how do you break through really strong differences of opinion? And I think it's exactly what you have articulated here. It's the process, it's the communication. When you sit down with people, you figure out that, again, either you misconstrued where your differences are or you're not as far apart as you thought. There's often more alignment. I mean, I've gone in and started projects and had people, making negative comments about everything. And, a couple weeks later, we're like partners working on the project. And that's only because, there was an effort to engage and have communication and recognize differences and find paths forward. So I just wanted to say, I think that is very true. And I think we need to think of the comp plan not just as something we're going to do for 2 years and then pick it up in another 10 years, but it's really an ongoing program, and that includes the implementation, and communication will certainly be an important part of that. So thanks for all the thoughtful feedback. We'll start to pull this together, and we'll be back, sometime next year.
Councilmember Green?
Thanks. Yeah, he just answered it. Is that he's going to be coming back in the new year, and I imagine then focus groups will start up too at that time.
Yep.
In the new
We're
year.
actively planning that right now.
Yeah.
The objective to keep the project on track is to adopt a vision statement and whatever goes along with that by resolution in March.
Okay.
We would love that if you had an opportunity to send in what your vision statement would be. We're going to then go through the process of mashing them all together and trying to come up with something that fits all of this, which is quite complex. So thank you.
Yeah, just use AI or something, just like have it do.
Chat AI.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, 9:41, we do have an approval and maybe council reports. So I don't know if we need to extend now or what you have on Julie for a presentation. But next will be the consultant contract for 2024 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan.
We should be quick.
All right, I'll go ahead and get started.
Great, thank you for going last. Yeah.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, and Mr. City Manager. For the record, I'm Anjali Maya, Director of Parks, Recreation and Facilities. We have tonight for your consideration a consultant contract for the update to the Parks, Recreation and Open Space Plan, which we refer to as PRO Plan for short. We are required to do these updates every 6 years to remain compliant for state grants, and our 2018 adopted PRO Plan will be in its 6th and final year next year. The PRO Plan is a component of the comprehensive plan, and staff are communicating internally to ensure that both documents and processes are coordinated. We will have several members of our staff team working on this update, as there are many parts, including the planning, designing, programming, maintenance, etc. The core team will have Janie Walzer and Shelby Perrault working side by side on day-to-day tasks. With that, I'm going to hand it off to Janie to give a short presentation.
Good evening, Council. I'm Janie. I'm the Management Analyst for Parks, Recreation, and Facilities. And online with us tonight is Steve Dew. He is from Conservation Techniques, and he'll be able to answer any questions you have after our presentation. So there you go. The PRO Plan stands for Parks, Recreation, Open Space Plan. It's a 6-year planning document that guides the department in the development of parkland, community events, and acquisition and maintenance of undeveloped land. A robust community involvement plan will be created and followed to give public ample opportunity to be involved in the project. There are several required elements that the document will have. First, the consultant will work to create a list of goals and objectives that measure and describe when those goals will be achieved. The plan will include a description of the city's facilities, parks, undeveloped land, trails, community events, and programming, including programming that is contracted to our partners. An analysis will be done of the city inventory, and the consultant will assist in the creation of priorities for land acquisition, development, enhancement, and management of our park system. This analysis will also explain why each future action of the department is needed. And then finally, the plan will include a parks capital improvement plan for the department projects by year of anticipated implementation, and it will identify potential funding sources. And there will be several touch points with the City Council through the next year as we complete the project. Consultant selection for the PRO Plan took place over 2 months. A request for qualifications, or an RFQ, was issued for consultant services to complete the PRO Plan update in October of this year. 2 firms responded to that RFQ, and both submissions were reviewed by a team of park staff as well as the chair of the Parks Recreation Commission. It was unanimously agreed upon that Conservation Techniques would be the best consultant for this project. This firm has created PRO plans across many cities in the Pacific Northwest, and the firm also completed our 2018 PRO Plan for the city of Sammamish, so it's already familiar with our community and our park system. Conservation Techniques will use subcontractors to complete the more specialized areas of the PRO Plan. MXM Landscape Architecture will complete the site assessments, and they're actually a firm that's currently working on our Notch property master plan, which will be a part of Town Center. Consor is a Seattle-based firm that will manage the public outreach tasks for the project. And the chart on the screen here is just a highlight of the organizations and the team. The scope of work will follow the required elements of the PRO Plan. Existing conditions and baseline analysis will review the existing city plans, which will include the comprehensive plan and our 2018 PRO Plan. It will update our base mapping of the park system and conduct an inventory and assessment. The community engagement phase will consist of a project webpage, social media plan, stakeholder group interviews, public meetings, which one will be virtual and one will be in person, as well as pop-up tabling at community events. And this phase also involves a statistically valid survey. The community needs assessment will assess the conditions of park assets and benchmark levels of service for the community. The consultant will also conduct a recreation, volunteer, and cultural arts programming assessment. The draft plan will include a compilation of analyses and recommendations from the planning process, including chapters detailing the public process, system inventory, community needs, goals, and implementation strategies. The draft will be brought back to council for review, and then the final PRO Plan will be reviewed by the Parks and Recreation Commission and again submitted to council for review and approval. There is $200,000 in the 2023-2024 budget allocated for this project. The contract that we are asking you to approve for Conservation Techniques is an agreement for services not to exceed $156,435. However, the total authorization will be $172,000 to include a 10% contingency, which would be paid out with authorization from our city manager. Here is going to be a high-level timeline for the project. Approving the contract tonight will allow our chosen consultant to get a head start on planning and keep the project on track, since this is a one-year process. The first half of the year will be focused on research and community outreach, and then the second half of the year will be for writing and review. Existing conditions and baseline analysis will take place from February to March. Community engagement, needs assessment, and level of service analysis will take place from April to August, excuse me. Compiling findings, draft writing, and draft review will take place August to October, and then the final pro plan review will be October to December. And we have 4 touch points planned with council throughout the project. March will likely be the next time that you hear from us. The consultant will lead a meeting to get council feedback about visioning and the project plan. In September, we will present an update of findings from the first 2 project phases, again asking for feedback and guidance before the consultant begins writing the draft plan. The draft plan will be presented in October, and council will once again have the opportunity to get feedback. And our goal is to bring the final plan back to you for approval in December of 2023. So tonight, we are asking council to authorize the city manager to sign the contract with Conservation Techniques to complete the 2024 Pro Plan update. Thank you for your time. We welcome any questions.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes, I move that we authorize the city manager to sign.
I think we have questions too.
Oh, well. No, it's been.
Councilmember, okay. Councilmember Treen?
Just one real quick question on the timeline. Is it possible to have it so that the community engagement happens in the spring and in the fall? Because that's when our community actually is most engaged. Just a suggestion or a question that, like, I don't know if that's a solid timeline or if just a thought.
We can do that. Yeah, a lot of it will happen in the spring. That's when we will hear as to what their wants are, and then we can report back in the fall to them.
And they can engage then in the fall again before it comes to us for our input?
Correct. So the in-person open house is planned for the very end of our community engagement phase, like in August, so that we can tell the community what we heard from them and they can give their final feedback.
Yeah, but August, a lot of our residents are on vacation, so that's why I'm saying, could it happen in September or October when they're more engaged?
Right. I think that's a question for Steve, if he can answer. We want to give them time to write the plan, so maybe Steve can talk to it.
Yeah, great question. Good evening, Council. Steve Dew, Conservation Techniques. And yeah, the intent is to do 2 primary phases of outreach. So in the spring, we would do community survey in a first public meeting. And then basically in September, when school's back in session, we would do the second public meeting. The middle period there for summertime would be tabling events, conducting conversations with stakeholders and other outreach to kind of dial things in. But really, we do want to work around what's an appropriate schedule for the local community and do public meetings when people would be willing to be engaged.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, of course. Councilmember Napure?
Yeah, thank you. So just for my clarification, since the pro plan is happening so close to the comprehensive plan updates that we're doing, some of the activities seem like overlapping. So for example, like the inventory of the parks, for example, you know, the demographic and trends and profile of the community. Some of these, we're doing it through multiple plans. Is there a way that we can consolidate or leverage some research that has already been done? And I think as far as the scope goes, you know, for example, if it's getting inventory of the parks and the facilities assessment, do we just focus on the delta since what has happened last time, or is the inventory, like, do we start all over again?
That's a great question. Steve, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, again, thanks for the question. And we do recognize that the comprehensive plan will be ongoing through the duration of the PROS plan update, and we'll look for opportunities to cross-pollinate our team with the comprehensive plan team and share information between our project and the comprehensive plan project. With regard to site analysis and site inventories, we will be building on what we've learned from the prior plan, but we will be conducting physical assessments of the parks, trails, and open spaces to not only validate or confirm what the inventory shows, but to look for the condition and quality of existing amenities, to look for opportunities for improvements, to look at maintenance and operational challenges or opportunities for enhancement. So it's more than just looking at the spreadsheet of amenities and saying yes, no, those amenities exist, but it's also using that time in the field to get a deeper understanding of what sorts of opportunities might be fitting for existing properties where the community says they might want an additional amenity or a new facility type, that we can be a little more strategic about how we think through that. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, and I was also thinking, we just approved the Kalani Master Plan last week. I know we had a huge community outreach for Big Rock Park. So hopefully we're able to still rely on that information. And then as far as the survey that's going to be sent out to the residents is what I assume is mainly the target, but I would highly encourage us to also reach out to our local businesses and especially like our Montessoris or, schools as well, because they use our parks and facilities a lot more as well. So I hope you don't forget them and continue to leverage the information that we already have. So thanks.
Councilmember Howe, would you mind making a motion to extend?
I'd like to move that we extend for 15 minutes.
Second.
All right, so to 10:15.
So.
Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we are extended till 10:15 now. Please go
And
ahead.
my quick question has to do with how are you going to I'm not quite sure where you are. Are you in Portland or are you in Orinda? And how does that impact your ability to work with us here?
Yeah, so our firm has two offices, Portland and Orinda. I have staff in Portland. I'm physically located in California at the moment due to family needs, but our firm works up and down the West Coast, and the bulk of our work actually is in the greater Puget Sound region. We're currently working in your neighbor, Redmond. We recently worked in Mercer Island, Edmonds, and a number of other communities in and around the region. Being physically located in different parts of the West Coast is really no barrier to the type of work that we do. We intend to be physically in Sammamish about a dozen times during the course of this project, in addition to the virtual meetings and all of the client and team coordination sessions that would be part of the project. So we don't see it as a barrier at all. And fortunately, sessions like Zoom and other technologies really make that a whole lot easier too.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lamb.
So I saw in the last pro plan that for the survey that you did for the community that there were 4,000 surveys sent out and you got a 22% response rate. And this year within the scope of work, it says that you're sending out 2,500. And so I was wondering why there are fewer surveys planned.
So in the prior process, we utilized a different survey firm. So we had a slightly different methodology. With this proposal, We are utilizing a method that we've tested a number of times across many jurisdictions over the last probably 5 years, where we do a standard randomized mailing to a sample of households. And we've consistently been getting 18 to 22% response rate through that. So the intent is to have the mail out survey serve as the random sample statistically valid survey, and to be qualifying as statistically valid, it needs to be of two qualities. One, it has to have a randomized sample, which we'll do through the mailing. And two, it needs to be of a sufficient quantity of returned sample. So to have a minimum of 300 gets us that that survey to the plus or minus 5% that you'd see typically. But again, if we aim for and hit the 20% mark on that response rate, we'll have substantially higher than the 300 minimum, and have that as a baseline for survey information about the project. In addition to the mail out survey, there is also an identical survey that will be available to the entire community. So it could be mailed and provided to the business community through the schools and promoted online. And that survey basically is a dual parallel survey that really just builds upon what we learn through the mail survey. Both data sets are isolated and kept separate, so we can cross-reference between the two and see if there's any variation, either in responses or response types. But it also gives us a chance to have that random sample and also be very inclusive to encourage the whole of the community to participate.
Okay, so the goal is to get like a 20% response rate, even though you're sending out fewer just because it's being measured differently by a different firm?
Yes.
Okay. The other question that I have is that, is there a rubric or some sort of scorecard for the priority trails? I was looking at the last pro plan and I saw like 5 different priorities, and one of them was, I believe, like connecting City Hall down 8th Avenue to the lake, which I think is really kind of pie in the sky. So, which kind of makes me wonder, is there some sort of scorecard? And, you know, I recently sent you, Anjali, a trail that I thought would be great, and it would benefit quite a few people and be inexpensive. So I just didn't know how those particular trails were the priority ones without having any sort of rubric or seeing any sort of rubric or scorecard.
Great question. And through this new process, we'll spend more time and energy working with staff and the rest of our project team to really think through what makes a priority and how that can then be applied to be implemented. Our goal is to have projects put into the capital improvements plan that ultimately can be those that the city can move forward with. Not just the pie in the sky, great ideas, but things that can actually be implemented. So we'll be working with staff through that.
Yeah, that would be great, because I would love to see like more trails that are outside of parks that, you know, speak to a lot of things that we're talking about, which is connectivity, and that are not as expensive and wouldn't be like years in the making, and, you know, could be something that could be done, you know, within 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, overall, I think the priority was, though, to see if we could get some east-west connections, because there are some north-south connections, and the more challenging ones are the ones that go in the east-west direction. And then there's always, you know, if there is some low-hanging fruit, something that can be connected quickly, we try and get those done as well.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. No, I was gonna, I want you to motion.
Oh,
yeah, or move.
I move that we authorize the city manager to, there we go. Oh, it was so close. To sign the contract with Conservation Technics to complete the 2024 Pro Plan update.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. 7-0. We are good to go on that. Thank you both. Have a
Thank
great
you,
evening. Next, we have council reports. I know for sure we have Deputy Mayor Lamb.
So I will be attending an SCA Public Issues Committee meeting on Wednesday. There are 4 main topics of discussion or action. One of them is there will be a discussion on the AWC Housing Solutions Group, their proposed legislation to address affordable housing needs. And I got quite a bit of feedback from our Director of Community Development, David Pyle, which will be really helpful in the discussion. And the next 3 action items is the 2023 SCA Regional Board and Committee appointments. PIC is expected to recommend the appointments on Wednesday to the SCA Board of Directors. Just to note that from our council, a new appointment is Councilmember Train as an alternate to the Growth Management Planning Council, the GMPC. And Councilmember Howe will be reappointed to the Joint Recommendations Committee, the GRC, and she is continuing her unexpired term in the King County Flood Control District Advisory Committee. And I think there was something that just came in that you mentioned. EMAC. And then the last 2 items is we'll be electing the 2023 PIC chair and vice chair. And the last item is the SCA legislative agenda, which we will be recommending to the SCA Board of Directors to adopt the agenda. And unless there's concerns or any objections, I plan to vote in the affirmative for the 3 items. Oh.
No, I had a concern.
Oh, you have a concern?
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about your JRC thing.
No, the concern that I had is just that the statement about affordable housing is extraordinarily weak. It just says, hey, we're going to work together and don't tell us what to do. Let me see if I can actually do a better job of saying what my concern is. The housing instability component that just talks about cities and states must partner to preserve and increase the supply and diversity. And they basically want to make sure that we get local options and tools and incentive to recognize diverse needs. But we want to keep our authority, our decision-making authority. And the other component is provide funding, please give us funding to assist local jurisdictions. It all sounds great, and I understand it. And as far as it goes, it's fine. The problem I see with it is that if the legislature does not establish goals and give us a dashboard to tell us how we're all doing with our roles and responsibilities, I just see this as a miss. It's just nice platitudes saying, yeah, we're going to do stuff and we're going to, keep it within our jurisdictions to make our own decisions about it. So maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't. Maybe we won't. So I just felt like if this is really a legislative priority, I just wondered if there could, I just had a struggle with that statement. Maybe no one else is struggling with that. And I'm happy to vote no, so you guys can vote yes.
An option is to abstain.
And I don't know that I've done a terribly persuasive job on this, but I have if we're going to ask for something, then let's ask for something specific. I'd even be happier if we were making something more concrete in our requirements or demands that please give us affordable housing targets and the means to complete it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, that is more where I would go, but that is me. So.
Does anybody have any comments? I can vote, I can abstain tomorrow on that one item.
I have a question for you, Amy, if that's okay. do you have a sense of, kind of for that particular item, is there more information that's being provided to the legislature? Is that the only statement that's there? Like, we met with our legislators and we're going to provide them with some additional detail, just so we get a sense of what is the intention there. So it doesn't, because I think Councilmember Howe calls out, it seems contradictory. Like, on the one hand, they're asking for one thing, and on the other hand, they're asking for something different. So could we get more clarity on that? Or is that something you'll get clarity in the meeting and you'll have to decide on the spot, which happens sometimes?
So this is mostly in its final form. It's come through council a couple of times. I can try to get more clarity. I haven't heard other cities having an issue with that particular item. I think Councilmember Trine has a comment. He's the alternate on PIC.
Yeah, so I think if the council's comfortable with it, that Councilmember Lamb could just state in the discussion that our council, this is the sentiment, or this is the concerns that our council has, because the item is a discussion item, and I do not believe they're going to take action on that one. But I think us voicing our concern during the discussion, as well as the information that Councilmember Lamb got from staff on regulations in the zone, I imagine it's on regulations and zoning.
I think we're talking about item number 9, which is the legislative agenda.
Oh,
Are we?
Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about the legislative agenda, which is an action item, not the discussion topic.
Okay, sorry. Ugh. Well, we can abstain then. I mean, so I guess the other point is to say that we had this concern, but we would vote in favor of it.
Yeah, I mean, I can do that. Okay, either way, I'll bring it up. Okay. Yeah. And finally, the North Caucus of the SCA is electing 2 members of their board of directors on Thursday, and we need somebody to represent to be the voting delegate for Sammamish. I am happy to do that if everybody is fine with that. Okay. Thank you.
All right, do we have anything else? I know you had something, Councilmember Howe, is that tomorrow, the JRC or something? I think you sent an email.
Yeah, I have, it's the JRCs for tomorrow, but just quickly, we did have an ETP meeting, and I'll send out the slides from that tomorrow so that you guys get access to it. It's about a cool project that WashDOT's got going with cloud and predictive stuff and actually tying back into jurisdictions with information.
Councilmember Trine? Oh, okay. Everyone else is good? Okay. Lastly, on Friday afternoon, Congresswoman Schreier, MD, Doctor, there's so many titles. She started the District 8 mayors meetings. She wanted to kind of start instituting those again. So that was last Friday afternoon. And I think she'll try and do them quarterly or every once in a while, but mostly she was kind of like, this is what I want to do. I'm willing to go back to DC and vote on the budget. I really want to get some things passed. And then she was asking mostly about Highway 2 and kind of introducing and meeting the new people in her district. So when I know about the next one in further advance, I would definitely love to hear if there's any concerns that I can bring to her. But this is mostly just a meet and greet hello because she has new people in her area. So other than that, I think, do we have anything else? You're good? Oh, go ahead, Scott. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a very brief city manager report, and mostly because we do have commission interviews coming up after the first of the year, I wanted to ask the clerk staff to give us a quick rundown on the number of applicants that we have so far, and to just make sure, do we have enough, or does council want to extend the time period? So if I could turn it over to the clerks quickly, and Krista.
Okay, so on the screen is the tally of current applicants, and we had our first applicant on November 8th, so they have been advertised for a while, but 8 of the 10 have come in the last week. So we are getting a little bit of a surge at the end, and we do tend to have some procrastinators historically. But right now, the Arts Commission has 3 for 3. Beaver Lake, that is a recent vacancy, unfortunately, that it has no applicants currently. And then Human Services, 1 applicant for 2 spots. And then Parks and Rec is 3 for 3, Planning Commission 3 for 2, and the secondary applicants get kind of complicated. So some people apply for a primary and a secondary, so you could kind of move things around. But that's just the current status there. So everything but Human Services and Beaver Lake could fill all the vacancies if the number of applicants. That doesn't guarantee that each person would be the preference of the council to actually appoint. Thank you.
When did you say it closed?
The closing date is this Friday, correct, Kristen?
Yes, this Friday at 5 o'clock
Gosh.
p.m.
I'm not happy about that. Can we extend that?
So one option, council, is we could extend the application period through till January 3rd. And then, because I think it's the study session on the 10th is when you're potentially doing interviews. So that would still give time to get the packet out to everyone and be able to read the materials. And just to make sure that we get a strong candidate pool for all the commissions and boards. Does that make sense?
As long as that's good with staff. Okay, great, yeah.
Okay, great. And then one last item, if I may,
Can you make a
council.
motion on that, or is it just assumed?
No, we'll just do that on our end. I appreciate that. One last item, council. I just want to remind everyone that City Hall will be closed around the holidays, specifically in recognition of Christmas Eve and New Year and Christmas Day, because they fall on Saturday and Sunday this year. The City Hall is closed Friday the 23rd and Monday the 26th. And then for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, again, they fall on Saturday and Sunday. Therefore, Friday the 30th and Monday the 2nd, City Hall is closed. So just a quick reminder for public that are listening in at the moment. And with that, my report is completed.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I realized, I don't know why, but I knew this coming into the meeting, but this is our last meeting of the year. I don't think we actually took a moment to thank, I wish we had done it when Anjali was still here, to thank the park staff for the Very Merry Sammamish under very trying conditions, and the staff did an amazing job. The community came out in full force, and it was a wonderful event. So I just want to take, if I might, a point of personal privilege and thank all of the staff for another amazing year here in Sammamish. Thank you, Scott and Carrie. We mark these time moments, and I think it's always important to take a minute and say thank you. We appreciate you, because we know that you guys do all the work, and you're what makes the city great. So thank you.
I second that.
Thank you all very much, and we'll pass that along to staff. I really appreciate that, and I try to share out with the staff when we do hear those things, because I think it's important.
Great, thank you. All right, I will entertain a motion.
So moved to adjourn.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Thank you, everybody. All those in favor to adjourn, say aye. 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 Opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Happy New Year.